I'll convene the meeting of the Select Board this Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. I'd like to acknowledge that currently we are recording this through Westborough TV, and I appreciate Westborough TV doing that recording. We are in a remote meeting with one of our board members being remote. For all those that are willing and able, I'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to see if there's anyone here for open forum. Seeing none, we'll move on. Our first agenda item is to approve the employment agreement for the interim police chief, Todd Minardi. And I'll just open it up to our town manager.
So the board had made the appointment of Deputy Chief Minardi as interim police chief. And then in executive session, the board voted to approve the employment agreement as negotiated with Deputy Minardi. So to just go through some of the terms of that agreement, under the charter, you can only have an interim in this position for a 3-month period that can renew up to 1 year, renew every 3 months up to 1 year. So there's a clause in there for that. So the first period would be July 1st to September 30th. There are terms within the agreement that if Deputy Minardi were to choose to no longer serve as your interim police chief or was not selected for the permanent appointment, he would be returned to his position as deputy. He will be paid a biweekly salary of, sorry, I have to pop up here.
$6,794.85.
Thank you. That's the one right in front of me. And then, and that is inclusive of any educational incentive. Hours of work are similar to our current chief as needed. And then he'll continue to receive a clothing allowance of $1,400 and physical fitness of $1,100. He has access to an automobile, which he currently has as a benefit as a deputy. And then there's indemnification language within the contract, so coverage through insurance. And then I think that about wraps it up. So I know Deputy Minardi is here. As I said, the board has already voted this in executive session, and so this is just acknowledgement of that contract in open session, and then signing of the contract.
Thank you. Any comments from the board?
Nope.
No?
Nope,
I would just say thank you to all parties for negotiating and to Deputy Chief, now interim chief, for the work there.
Okay.
You beat me to it.
Sorry.
So thank you as well.
Yep.
But thanks.
All right, I'll look for a motion.
Do we need a motion or?
Nope.
No.
No, we don't. Okay.
No.
I didn't know if we needed a motion
Yeah, I
in
know.
open session. So.
No, we just report out because we made the motion and voted on it in executive session. 5-0.
Yep.
Thank you.
5-0, and we signed the contract, so.
Contract has been signed on our side. It just has to be countersigned by our new interim chief.
So thank you.
Thank you.
Interim Chief or Chief Minardi. We appreciate your willingness to serve the community in that position. Thank you.
I appreciate the support.
Absolutely. All right, move on. Let's see, are we already too far ahead? We are. Would you like to move on? What do you think, Christy? 13 maybe? Or
Number 7?
7?
7? Sure.
Actually, Joanne is planning to attend the
Okay.
meeting, so if we can
Okay.
wait for her. Do you want to do minutes, number 17?
2 minutes?
Talk slowly.
Yeah.
See if we can throw in anything else. Oh, probably 15 as well. So 15 and 17, I think you could probably do
Yeah.
quickly.
Why don't we do 15 first?
Okay.
Get them in order.
So 15 is rescinding the policy on drought warning restrictions. This is being asked to be rescinded because at the annual town meeting, the town created a water use restriction bylaw. Part of the intent of that bylaw was to consolidate all water use restrictions into one bylaw so that to create consistency and to create a guiding document for the community if they have questions. And so this was one of those documents that was incorporated or considered in development of that bylaw. In order to not cause confusion or have any inconsistencies, we're asking that the board rescind this policy.
Any discussion?
Nope. I would move to rescind the Select Board's policy on drought warning restrictions originally adopted April 2nd, 2002.
Second that?
Okay. Vote. Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you. And on to 17.
Minutes.
Oh. So I'll move to approve the June 13, 2023 minutes.
Second?
Any further discussion? No? Okay. Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes.
You could do the town manager report.
Okay. You think you can do it? Sure.
Oh, I can try.
All right.
So I have made some appointments that are under the authority of the town manager. So one is appointing Dr. Ehrlich to the Board of Health again. We did have some other folks that were interested in that position, and I really appreciate them expressing their interest. One of the reasons that I wanted to reappoint Dr. Ehrlich was that he has been working really closely on the waste management issue, and sort of given his history with that and our need to make some decisions and take some next steps, I reappointed him. Fred Leonardo was reappointed as the building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer, Al Gordon as constable, Craig Rickoff as fence viewer, Sean O'Dowd as measurer of wood, Peter O'Neill to the municipal building committee, Celia Dora as parking clerk, and Joe Mulvey as sealer of weights and measures. The town was able to settle some litigation that we've been discussing. So the town has settled the litigation related to 129 East Main Street, Town of Westborough versus Westborough Retirement Residence, LLC. I won't read the case number, but this case was based on the affordable housing requirement in the Westborough zoning bylaw. As part of the settlement, the town received $950,000, which will be moved to the Affordable Housing Trust at the next town meeting pursuant to town meeting authorization. Related to affordable housing responsibilities, Fred Leonardo, Jim Robbins, and I met with members of the Affordable Housing Trust, so Ed Bain and Alan, to review affordable housing responsibilities of the staff, the select board, and the housing partnership committee. So we're going to be coming forward with recommendations on how we might be able to increase the efficiency by asking the trust to take on some of those responsibilities. 153 Turnpike Road follow-up. At a recent board meeting, the board considered permitting a pool table at 153 Turnpike Road, and so we had 2 abutters in attendance. They raised concerns both about the existing fence abutting their property, and then also the use of the animal hospital property being a cut-through. The fence has since been replaced. I know Patrick saw it, so that's good.
Great. That's better.
And then, and I guess I just want to acknowledge that the property owner actually watched our meeting and reached out to me before I even had a chance to reach out to him. So that was appreciated.
That's great news.
Yep. The cut-through issue is one that we would need to be addressed. We'll discuss it more with staff because of and I think this was actually raised during the meeting because of the blocking off of similar access points. That's why this one is being used as a cut-through. So. Just letting the board know that last Friday I participated on a town manager panel to talk about what town managers do and the challenges we face related to finance through the state's local finance Commonwealth Fellowship Program put together by the Division of Local Services. And then just also letting you know that I was sworn in as a member of the Lieutenant Governor's Local Government Advisory Commission, which I've been a part of for several years. So.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. As you all know, our treasurer collector is retiring on Friday, June 30th. And so we know that the treasurer's office is going to be short-staffed due to that retirement. And then also the limited availability of our interim treasurer collector, which we'll talk about later, but she'll be working 19 hours a week. And then we have some staff time off between July and August. So we've been working with some of the other departments, helping create some coverage for the treasurer collector's office, but we plan to close the office to the public on Fridays, just for that 1 month period, July to August, really to just help staff be able to get some time to focus on the things that they need to do. I don't think it'll be a disruption to the public. We've noticed since COVID that a lot more people are paying their bills online, so we're still seeing less patrons coming into town hall. And we'll post that when we get a little bit closer, probably after the holiday, so people are more aware. And then the senior center is going to be closed to the public on July 3rd because they have staff has vacations planned, but also they had not scheduled any programs for that date anyway because they had scheduled maintenance projects to happen that day, assuming that folks would not be coming. So letting you know about that. In recreation, the recreation department, in collaboration with Youth and Family Services and the library, hosted the 3rd annual Last Day of School party, offering free pizza, ice cream, cotton candy, and music. The IT department, the domain changing from town.westborough.ma.us to westborough.ma.gov was something that you had recently approved. The reason for that is to make it easier for people to identify the town of Westborough, and there's also security benefits. It's already been implemented, and the domain change for email is expected to be completed late June or early July. Youth and Family Services on Tuesday, June 20th, they did the end of school year event. Over 400 children and family members attended. The town clerk's office, the final notices for dog licensing have been mailed. The animal control officer will be issuing citations in July for any unlicensed dogs. So if your dog is unlicensed, please contact the town clerk's office. Also, street listings will go into print in July and should be available for purchase in mid-August. The new children's librarian, Bernadette Foley, started on June 20th. She was formerly the children's librarian in Medfield for the last 10 years. The outreach team, library director and assistant director, planned and ran a summer reading roadshow earlier this month. So they brought the registration forms and book giveaways to Windsor Ridge, Park Village, Arrive Apartments, and the Touch a Truck event. And then the Screen on the Green returns in July on Thursday nights at 8:30 at Bay State Common. And if there's rain, new this year, they'll be showing the movie at the Westborough Fire Department. In the finance office, several grants and contracts. Let's see. The MassWorks grant for Flanders is extended to June 30, 2024. The dog park grant for the $25,000 has come in. Affordable Housing Trust received 2 proposals for the RFP for 3 Baylor redevelopment. And then in the Treasurer Collector's Office, first quarter real estate and personal property tax bills are due on August 1st. Again, as was noted previously, the billing software system conversion is underway. And then the following notice will be emailed to all accounts that have used or set up auto pay through Invoice Cloud, because there's actions that folks need to take. Due to internal software change, any previously set up real estate and or personal property auto pay functions will no longer process after May 30th, 2023. This has already been sent out. Therefore, if you wish to continue using auto pay, you will need to take action. So you can go to the town's website for that. In the assessor, the change only affects the third-party bill pay system, Invoice Cloud. In the assessor's office, the new tax exemption that was passed at town meeting and then approved by the state legislature is a new home rule petition tax exemption. So it's an additional program to provide tax relief for qualifying seniors. You must receive the state circuit breaker income tax credit to qualify. So you can reach out to the assessor's office on that. The exemption can provide up to 100% match of the circuit breaker exemption received. Applications will be available in early fall. That's it.
Thank you. I would just say, just one quick note on the appointments. Thank you to those that were willing to volunteer for those appointments and work for those appointments. It's terrific to see that contribution from the community. So, where are we at? Oh, right on time. Let's go back here. So let's move to number 4, continued public hearing, Class 2 dealer's license for TD&J International Auto Sales at 5 Kings Grant Road.
So we don't expect to see Mr. Yahoub here. He actually did provide us with an email stating his intent to surrender the license. He had a Class 2 license. He had come to you a couple times. The issue being largely that he wasn't presently located in Westborough, but rather in another state. And so you had suspended that license pending his return to Westborough. Sort of given his situation, he wanted to respectfully surrender the license at this time. So really your action is just acknowledge the surrendering. No motion needed. We've already reached out to him to ask him to send the license back to us, and we'll be reaching out to the RMV as required.
Terrific, thank you. It's great to have this behind us. Can I get a motion?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Sean?
Tebow, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes?
And Welch, yes. Thank you.
And
Move on to Doubletree.
yeah, we have to wait till 6:30.
6:30.
Oh, all right. That's
What
right.
else can we
We're
do?
moving too quick.
Do you want, Chief Purcell's here. I don't know if you want to do the interdepartmental transfer for fire.
Sure.
Where's the oh, yeah, here we go. So item 16. And that was just added to the packet, wasn't it?
Yes. So it is,
Yep.
yep.
I got it. So, yeah, if you can give us a,
Sure. So you have 4 interdepartmental transfers before you. As a reminder, in May and June, the board can approve interdepartmental transfers. So that might be from one department to another, or it might be from salary and wages to expenses, or vice versa within a particular department. There is no correlation between the department receiving the money and the department has the excess funding. It doesn't, you can take it from anywhere. The only important point is that the one sending the money has extra money and the one receiving the money needs the money. So, it requires your approval and also that of the Advisory Finance Committee. So all 4 of these will be taken up by the Advisory Finance Committee on Thursday, pending your approval. So for Chief Purcell's, the amount requested is $33,200 to go into his expenses. And then coming from police department salary and wages. So as you can see, the department heads of each department do need to sign off on this to acknowledge that change. And Chief Purcell is here if you want to hear more about the deficit.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Good evening, Patrick Purcell, your fire chief. So when we wrote our budgets in October, November of 2021, that impact today, you've probably heard me speak ad nauseum over the last couple of years about the call volume increase at the fire department. The 3 main items that have driven us into the deficit that we have are, first is ambulance billing, so EMS billing. So we pay ComStar Ambulance a percentage by contract to conduct that billing for us and help us collect our revenue. Since the time I have written this contract, subsequent to our call volume, we have collected an extra almost $500,000 that we did not anticipate that we would. Therefore, the percentage that they collect is up, which put us about $11,000 behind for that line. We also fell short, subsequent to the same topic, for medical supplies because of the volume by $10,713.69. And then also, as you know, we have 3 public safety vehicles that have been on order or back ordered, trying to keep some of those vehicles that need to go in service. And also with the call volume impacting our fleet, we ran into a deficit, which I highlighted to the town in January for vehicle maintenance of, we're upside down about $26,000 right now. And that's not only from call volume alone, that's also due to price increases of about everything. We had one mechanical issue on Medic 2 that cost us $12,500 for on an oil leak and a diesel particulate filter. So those are the things that contributed to our shortcoming. We made up some of our deficit elsewhere, and that's the balance that we're short now. So we collected a lot of revenue to make up for this, but at the same time, budgetarily, I'm short.
Thank you, Chief. Any questions, discussion? No? All right, I'll take a motion.
I'll move to transfer the sum of $33,200 from Police Department salary and wages to Fire Department expenses.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes?
And Welch, yes. Thank you, Chief.
Do you want to handle the other ones in there? or-
Yeah, we can do
so.
electricity.
Exactly.
Electricity is one that I think we see every year because we budget, we budget for the electricity that we expect to use, and sometimes we use more. So this is a request to transfer $18,250 from finance, salary, and wages to the electricity account to cover electric bills. Just to note that we did increase the electricity budget for fiscal '24, understanding that rates will go up, but also, understanding we continue to try to chase our usage each year. So.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, a motion?
I'll move to transfer, interdepartmental transfer of $18,250 from finance, salary, and wages to electricity budget.
Second.
Any questions? All right, Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. All right, on to the next one.
The legal budget. So as the board's aware, we've had a number of cases this fiscal year. This actually, we budgeted $130,000 for this line. To date, we have increased the budget through both an AFC, Advisory Finance Committee Reserve Fund transfer and also town meeting by $70,000. So, and then we're requesting an additional $50,000 to get us through the end of the fiscal year. This is inclusive of KP Law as well as our tax title attorney expenses. So this is an estimate based on the May bill. Again, we'll continue to evaluate this going forward, in FY24.
Christy, I'm sorry, can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
What were the other two amounts? Do you have those?
We transferred $20,000 from AFC Reserve Fund.
Yep.
And then we increased the budget, or is it free cash? We did a free cash article at annual town meeting for $50,000.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, motion?
I will move to have an interdepartmental transfer of $50,000 from Police Department salary and wages to legal expenses.
Second.
Take a vote. Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes.
And the last one is Board of Health. And this is to transfer $2,000 from Board of Health salary and wages to Board of Health expenses. This was due to a bill that was just received for services received in fiscal '23, and I might need Leah to help me remember what the bill was for.
It's for the nurse to go to TB cases.
Okay, so it's for our nurse to follow tuberculosis cases.
Okay. Any questions? All right, I'll take a motion.
I will move for a departmental transfer of $2,000 from Board and Health salary and wages to Board of Health expenses.
Second.
Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you, Christy.
Yep.
And staff.
And then I don't know if you want to do 19.
Yeah.
19. Yes. Let's do
So this is a reappointment of Kenneth Salzman to the Affordable Housing Trust, seeking reappointment for 2 years. And then if you were to reappoint him, that would leave one seat to fill on the trust. And then Madison Smith has asked to be appointed to the Spirit Committee. She was a member in fiscal '22, not in fiscal '23, but she sent in her request, which would be treated as a new appointment for fiscal '24. She is not a resident of Westborough. However, she's the owner of Vivacity Nutrition on Summer Street. So the board can decide if you want to fill that seat with someone who's a non-resident. And if you approve that would give the committee, if you approve this appointment, that will give the committee a quorum. And it's a 1-year appointment.
Okay, any comments, questions?
Be nice to have a quorum on that committee.
Yeah, and I certainly appreciate Madison being willing to do that, so thank you for
I'll just comment that Mr. Salzman's contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust has been significant. He's a contractor and a developer by trade, and so his expertise has definitely come in handy
Excellent.
as we move forward with our projects.
So I will move to reappoint Kenneth Salzman to the Affordable Housing Trust for a term to expire June 30, 2025.
Second?
And I'll first say that I'm sorry about my mistake there. Thank you to Kenneth Salzman for being willing to serve in that capacity. I'll take a vote. Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes.
If you'd like another motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, I move to appoint Madison Smith to the Spirit Committee for a term to expire June 30, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion?
EO, yes.
I like that. Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you.
Would jump in the chair.
Number 12?
All over the place.
What's
I
12?
feel like I'm playing shoots and ladders.
So this is the approval of the police supervisors and public works union contracts.
So as the board is aware, the process, once we complete collective bargaining, we execute a memorandum of agreement with the union. Once that is in place and in effect, the final step is to incorporate all of those changes into the actual collective bargaining agreement. That's what you have in your packet tonight for the police supervisors union and the DPW union. These are three-year agreements for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025. And as I mentioned, the board previously approved a memorandum of agreement with each of these unions. After approving that in executive session, you did announce it in open session with the highlights. I will just note, we do post our employment agreements on the town's website on the Human Resources page. So if anyone wanted full detail, it's there. And just to note, the police supervisor's contract includes the detail rates that the board authorized, consistent. There was a reopener clause, and when we negotiated and agreed the memorandum of agreement, when the patrol union settled for higher rates, the supervisors exercised the reopener, and the current collective bargaining agreement now matches the detail rates that are in the patrol contract.
Any questions? I do have one. I'm just curious if I should recuse myself from this.
I don't think you need to because it's not negotiation. Yeah.
It's
And
already-
not-
It's already
not a
agreed to.
clerical
It's already
union
done.
either.
Right.
Yep.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought. I just wanted to make sure. And okay, terrific. I'll look for a motion then.
So I move to approve the 3-year agreement between the Town of Westborough Police Supervisors Association for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, as presented.
Second?
Any further discussion? Okay, I'll look for a vote. Go ahead, Sean.
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Can I get a second motion?
Move to approve the 3-year agreement between the town and the Service Employees International Union, Local 888, Public Works Unit, for the period July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2025, as presented.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you.
Now we're on time.
Perfect. All right. So let's open the public hearing, or excuse me, this
Yep.
is, yeah, we're opening a public hearing for DoubleTree alcohol license. You want to set the stage, or?
Do you want to open the public?
Oh, yes, sorry. I'll take a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll move to open the public hearing for the request to transfer Section 12 all alcohol hotel license for DoubleTree Hotel at 5400 Computer Drive.
Second?
Any discussion? Okay, a vote. Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Welcome, gentlemen.
Good
Can you
evening.
just introduce yourself?
My name is Tyler Hensler. Sorry, is this one on? Yeah.
Yes.
My name is Tyler Hensler from Upton, Cannell, and Devlin on behalf of the applicant, West Drive Operating VII LLC, which does business as the DoubleTree, located at 5400 Computer Drive in Westborough. The applicant is seeking to transfer the license, the on-premise all alcohol license at the same location, apply for a management agreement, and as well as a pledge of the license as well. Here with me today is the current DoubleTree general manager and current manager of record, Scott Smith. He will be staying in this role through the transition. To walk you through what's generally going on, the hotel is being purchased by West Drive Operating VII LLC, which is associated with the Magna family of hotel operators. They are an experienced hotel owners. They have hotels out west in the Midwest and right here in Massachusetts in both Revere and Boston, among other locations. So they have been seen and they have been approved by the ABCC before, and of course local licensing authorities such as yourself. The hotel will generally remain the same operationally. Most of the staff is remaining on. No significant changes to the operation are planned. This is essentially a change of ownership, the shuffling of paper, and the guests and the surrounding community should not expect significant changes before, during, or after this transfer. West Drive manager, VII LLC, will manage the property with respect to the food and beverage operations. The management company is owned by certain companies within the Magna family as well, so similar ownership structure. We are also applying for a pledge on the license to Customers Bank and related to a bank loan to pay for the purchase price of both the property and the business assets, which of course includes the liquor license that we're here about today. The proposed manager of record is Scott Smith, to my right. He is a U.S. citizen. He's familiar with the rules and regulations pertaining to the sale of alcohol. He is a resident of the Commonwealth, and he has extensive experience in the industry, including being the current manager of record at the DoubleTree, which will, of course, ensure continuity throughout this change. We're happy to answer any additional questions you might have. Thank you for your time.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the details. I'll just say welcome to Magna and to our community. It's great to see a smooth transition as you've laid out, so thank you very much. I'll just open it up to the board to see if there's any questions.
Yeah, so I'm curious to know what the operating name will be on the hotel. Will it still be DoubleTree or?
Yeah,
change
it will not change. Yeah, it will not change.
Oh, it's
Doing
rem-
business is DoubleTree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Renewing, license with DoubleTree as well.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, great, thanks for.
So yes, they'll still have the cookies.
Yeah, no, I just, I missed that somewhere in the packet, so thank you for clarifying that. But no, everything else seems to be in order, and I'm glad the business is staying and they've found a buyer and hopefully a smooth transition.
Any others? Sean, any questions? No?
No, thank you, Patrick. Welcome.
All right, I will look for a motion then.
Okay. I move to approve the transfer of the Section 12 all alcohol hotel license from Computer Drive Concessions LLC to West Drive Operating VII LLC and name Scott Smith as the manager of record.
I forgot, we need to open it up also for public comment,
sorry.
so
Yeah.
I apologize.
Never mind.
Sorry,
Just
just-
reminded me. Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the motion.
I second it.
Thank you.
Sorry, Alan.
I made
That was a good point.
Sean?
Keel, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Nope, we got-
We have
Thank you.
another
Have a good
motion.
day.
Two more
Wait,
motions.
Oh, that's right. We got
So-
two more. That's right. Yep.
I
sorry.
move to approve the management agreement between West Drive Manager VII LLC and West Drive Operating VII LLC.
Second.
Discussion? All right, look for a vote.
Keel,
Sean?
yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. And the additional
Finally, I
motion?
move to approve the pledge of liquor license to Customer Bank at 99 Bridge Street, Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, 19460.
Second.
Sean?
Keel, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Now, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your time. and-
Thank you.
Thank you, welcome.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second?
Roll call vote. Sean?
Keel, yes.
Johnson, yes?
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you very much.
13?
Item,
13? Okay.
In your packet, you have a draft job description for an assistant animal control officer. This is something that came through our budget process and was funded for July 1st. It is a part-time position intended to provide primarily backup coverage when our current full-time animal control officer is on vacation, as well as additional evening and weekend support and coverage. So the position, as I mentioned, was funded for July 1st. So with your approval of the position, it will be added to the classification plan, and we would post the job ad to begin recruitment. Just a reminder as well, 38% of the costs of our animal control budget are borne by the town of Grafton, with whom we have an agreement to provide services.
This is just funded at 12 hours per week,
Correct.
correct? Yep.
thank you, Kim. Any questions,
Yeah,
comments?
I do. Being that this person will basically support the animal control officer when not available vacation, I mean, it sounds like some backup coverage, so possibly working at the same time, who will this person take direction from? Who will supervise this person if the ACO is like on vacation?
Let Deputy Minardi speak to that, but I believe she reports to a sergeant currently.
That's okay.
The question is, so the animal control officer is appointed through my office. However, we've delegated it to the police department. So currently, the animal control officer reports to who?
Lieutenant Daniels.
Okay, Lieutenant, sorry.
Okay, so this part-time person would also report to Lieutenant Daniels or to the animal control officer?
To the animal control officer, and to the extent that the animal control officer is not available and the assistant needs support,
Yep.
it would, through the police department, Lieutenant Daniels.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I do have one. Just coincidentally, the other day, I was watching a program, and they talked about rabies vaccinations, and to my astonishment, I never knew this. Apparently, human beings also can get rabies vaccinations, and the question was, well, who would get rabies vaccination? And the answer was people such as vets and animal control officers would get them. So then it made me think, as I looked at the packet, is there a need in the description to, in order to, I guess, protect the town in the event that someone was injured, to put a language in here in regards to, requiring all related vaccinations as part of the position to protect the individual as well as the town in that event that someone was injured as a result. So I'll let Christy or Kim provide
To
some.
my knowledge, it's not required that individuals in this position have those vaccines, so I don't think putting it in as a requirement, similar to other discussions we've had around mandating vaccines with employees, would be appropriate. I think we could certainly make that available and offer it to the extent that an employee in this position wished to have that.
Because you told me before, I think I didn't know that that humans could receive the vaccine either. So I think we can certainly look into it a little bit, and as Kim said, make it the information available.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah, can I ask, I'm sorry, oh, did Sean have something?
Sean, did you have something?
No, I'm all set.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Sheldon.
So just to follow up in terms of the reporting relationship, being that we're adding this responsibility to the animal control officer, I don't recall, and I didn't look, does that position reflect management responsibility? And do we have to update that?
We've actually had discussion about reviewing that job description and updating it. We don't have it in front of you tonight, but we anticipate bringing an updated job description to you.
Okay, thank you.
Terrific. Any other questions, comments?
No, just back, I mean, thanks for bringing that up. I didn't know that either. I think making a recommendation out of requirement, to me, makes sense as
Yeah.
well. But I do think what was communicated, to make that knowledge available to both employees would be great.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
I will, let's see. Yeah, we need a motion on this, so
I'll move to approve the Assistant Animal Control Officer job description as presented and to add the position to the town's classification plan.
Second?
Sean?
EO, yes?
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you. All right. Are we at?
Yep, we're at time.
6:40, perfect. All right, so we will continue, we'll go to item 6, continue the public hearing, liquor license and common victualler permit for Chorito Mexican Restaurant at 291 Turnpike Road.
So this is a continued public hearing from your last couple meetings. The recommendation had been to allow Torito to continue to hold their licenses, liquor license and convic, as they were moving towards work to complete the sprinkler work. We did place on your desk an email from Sela Dor in our office about 4:30 today, that our community development director, Fred Leonardo, has acknowledged that the work related to the sprinkler work has been done. They do not currently have their COI because additional paperwork needs to be submitted, but the actual work has been done. And so his recommendation is that you continue it again till your next meeting to confirm that everything is all set at that time.
And from reading that, it sounds like it's really not with the operator of the restaurant, it's really with their vendor that's doing the firework has to provide some final
Right.
documentation. They expect it within the next 24 hours, so it's unfortunate it's not here yet, but personally, I'm fine with continuing to that next meeting and allowing them to continue operation until that time.
Any other questions or comments? Do I need to, in a continuation, do I need to ask for public?
Yes,
So is there any member from the public who would like to speak on,
or from the operator.
or from the operator, anything you would like to say? No? Thank you for being here. All right, I'll look for a motion.
I'll move to continue the public hearing to July 11th at 6:15 PM.
Second?
Any further discussion on the motion? Sean?
EO, yes?
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you very much for being here. We'll see you
Thanks.
hopefully in a couple weeks.
And thank you for getting the work done.
Yes.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Appreciate it.
Exciting.
All right. Are we ready to do 7?
Joanna's here.
Oh, terrific. So we'll look to appoint Joanne Savniak as interim treasurer collector and approval of the employee agreement.
Yep. Joanne is a familiar face, as she had worked for the town for several years as our treasurer collector. She's since retired and is now available for interim work, so we were really pleased when we reached out to her with the upcoming retirement of our treasurer collector, Linda Smith, that she's able to come back and help us out 19 hours a week. I did forward you a resume for those of you who don't know Joanne, but she's going to come up here and introduce herself to you. The agreement within your packet is this basically the same agreement, or modeled after the same agreement that we had entered into with Bob Haley when he retired and helped us out as we searched for our subsequent treasurer collector. Joanne, do you want to introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself?
Welcome, great to see you again.
Welcome
Hi,
home.
I'm Joanne Savinac. Hello, Mr. Johnson.
Hello, how are you?
Familiar face at the
Yes.
table, and Ms. Williams. So I am Joanne Savinac. I worked for the town of Westborough from 2001 to 2017, so 16 years I was here. It was a great working time. I enjoyed working with Leah and Jonathan, who's still here, and Wendy, who just retired. So, and Linda was working for Leah when I was here. So after I left Westborough, I was in Charlton for 5 years as their first combined treasurer collector. They created the position out of two, and they hired me because I had both experience that way. So, and then I retired from Charlton, and now I'm back doing consulting work.
Yeah, we appreciate you being willing to come back, so thank you very much. Any questions?
No.
Comments?
No, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will move to authorize the town manager to finalize and execute an agreement between Joanne Savignac and the town of Westborough for the position of interim treasurer collector.
Second.
Sean?
EO, yes.
Johnson enthusiastically, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
Likewise. Welch, yes. Thank you very much again.
Welcome back, Joanne.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Can I just say something really quickly?
Absolutely.
As the finance director, thank you very much.
All right. Great to have somebody in that position.
And Christy, just as a kind of related follow-up, but you said the office for July, August will be closed to the public, but there's still work being done. They're just closed to the public.
Just on Fridays.
Yeah, just on Fridays.
Just on
Yeah,
Fridays,
okay.
yep.
Yep, so just.
But still working, just
You're still
getting
working,
other
just
stuff done.
Time to work behind the scenes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, thank
Yep,
you.
thanks.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to item 8. Are we heads here? Terrific. This is the request for access to perform due diligence at 45 High Street Extension via the Affordable Housing Trust. Thank you very much. If you can introduce yourself.
Thank you, Patrick. I'm Edward F. Bain. I'm also Chair of the Westborough Affordable Housing Trust, and I'm here. If we want to bring up a slide, Alan's going to assist me. And if we can go to...
Thank you, Sheila.
Basically, the trust has identified a parcel of land that's owned by the town that you can now see on the screen that's located at 45 High Street Extension. That's the image of the plot of land. It's about 1.2 acres, and we are looking at the possibility of doing development there if the town so desires and if it is feasible. So what we're asking for tonight is basically to be able to get permission to survey, mark the property, and also do a percolation test to see if we can put in a common septic system, given that we can't use the town sewer, given that we have a moratorium right at the town now. It is adjacent to some wetlands, but it's only a small part of the property is adjacent to that. And we're not asking for any commitment from the select board or the town at this time for a purchase or any other use. We just want to look at a feasibility, and in worst case, the town comes away with a survey with the property.
Questions?
I mean, Alan, do you want to add anything?
No,
That's
just to add to that, just to emphasize, this is preliminary work that would let us decide whether or not, if the property can't do septic, then we stop. If it can, then we might look internally within the trust at the cost of development to see if it's feasible, at which point we may or may not come back and ask for transfer of the property for the purpose of affordable and workforce housing. We know that there at times has been some other interest in the property for other purposes, but we feel it's important that if housing was one consideration for the select board, that we should at least have our ducks in the row and know whether or not, if we're going to ask for use of the property, whether or not it's actually feasible and affordable to build on it. So it's doing legwork that might tell us no, or it might tell us it's possibility at some point in the future.
I mean, seems totally appropriate. Appreciate the thoughtful approach, and I'm fully supportive of this. Thank you.
Yeah. Myself as well, you, sorry, Mr. Chair, but looking at, it's in a residential neighborhood, it's surrounded by residential as well as the complex on Mayberry Drive. I mean, it seems like an appropriate fit, and this is a first step that you're asking for.
Yeah.
Fully supportive as well at this point.
And we wanted to bring it to the public's attention because the percolation test does require some digging.
Sure,
You know,
so
the
we're like,
contractor's
what's
gonna-
going on?
Yeah, they're going to have to do some holes and look at, how the water drains, so.
Sean, any questions or comments? Did we lose you?
I'm sorry, 1 second. And I'd just like to say thank you to the Affordable Housing Trust for all their hard work. They, probably the hardest working committee in the town, ours included. So thank you very much.
You're saying that because we can't slap you right now.
If we can just get a heads up when that, even for the public, like when
Yep.
that work is going to be taking place, I think that would be appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, terrific. I appreciate the work you guys have done bringing this forward as well, so thank you. I'll look for a motion.
Go ahead.
I move to permit the Affordable Housing Trust to perform due diligence on the property located at 45 High Street Extension for the purpose of understanding the feasibility of a future housing project at that location.
Second.
Any further questions? Discussion? Sean?
Theo, yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you again for the work here.
Thank you very much.
Very good presentation, too.
Thanks.
All right, item 9, recreation update on Lake Chauncey Beach operations from our rec director. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, my name is Jen Kirkland. I'm the Recreation Director. Thank you for having me here tonight to talk to you a little bit about the beach and what our plan is for the summer. So just to give you a little bit of history of how we got to where we are. We started recruiting lifeguards this year at the end of January. The starting pay that we were offering lifeguards was $16 an hour, and after working a full summer with us, we were going to offer to reimburse staff for any lifeguard certification course fees. But that can total, I've seen classes offered at almost $400. The applicant pool started fairly strong. We had 17 kids apply by the beginning of April. As we moved through the hiring and interview process, at least half of the people that applied never responded to calls or emails to set up an interview. We did end up interviewing 6 to 7 applicants. We offered all of them a position because I felt maybe we could do something with the 7 that had applied. But after offering the position, at least 4 of them just declined the work for other jobs or internships. So due to the lack of qualified lifeguards, I've decided not to staff the beach with lifeguards this summer and open the beach during town hall business hours. This is the exact same thing that we did last year that worked very well for us. So the gate at the beach will be open, like I said, during town hall business hours, Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 8 a.m. to 5, Tuesdays, 8 a.m. to 6, and Fridays, 7:30 to 12. The bathrooms at the beach will not be open, but an additional porta potty will be available in the parking lot. I've spoken with DPW, police, and fire in the fire department, and they're all supportive of this plan. DPW will help with the trash. Police and fire also didn't express any concern from last year, with this plan. The Board of Health will continue to test the lake for E. coli, and should there be any finding, we'll post the beach and notify the public as we normally would. The Recreation Commission also voted last night in support of this plan. It's disappointing, but again, we're not alone. This is still a huge problem that towns are facing. It's hard to get lifeguards. The workforce has changed. Kids want better paying jobs, internships, things like that. Some good news, we're fully staffed counselor positions. We actually had to turn a couple of kids away. So camp and playground programs are good. It's just the lifeguard staff is just really hard to come by. And again, we're not alone. Every meeting that I go to, like MRPA or other larger meetings, it's the same story everywhere. So that's what our plan is. I'm happy to answer any questions if I can.
Thank you, Jen. Appreciate that. Any questions?
Just a question is, you mentioned internships, whatever, but if we were to Was it a price thing? Like, if we were to offer more from a salary perspective, do you think we would
Maybe the
staff it?
state offers starting $21 an hour with a $1,000 sign-on bonus. I don't know if our budget, and that's for just a lifeguard, 16 years old, your first job, $21 an hour, $1,000 signing bonus. I don't know if that, probably would make a difference. I don't know if our budget could cover it, but, yeah, it's competitive.
And just so I understand too, that, sorry, just to follow up, is, I know that we used to, or thought we did, I could be dating myself, offer swimming lessons as well. Did the lifeguards teach the swimming lessons as well?
Yes, they did.
Okay. And final question is, how many, in order to operate the beach, what is the minimum number of lifeguards that you would need?
So if we wanted to open the beach 7 days a week, 11 to 5 like we normally would, I would become 12 at minimum. Really, realistically, more like 15, just given, again, like the workforce has changed. Kids' schedules now are just so tight. Even just when I started 10 years ago, kids wanted to work all the time, and now kids are taking longer vacations or they need certain days off. So I would say at least 15 to feel really safe, because when we're open 7 days a week, 2 weekends I know are hard for people, so.
Nope, that's great.
Yep.
And one of the other concerns we discussed was we had all brand-new lifeguards with no experience, and we were unable to recruit and identify anyone who could serve in a supervisory mentorship capacity, and keeping in mind that we're talking about a beachfront, not a pool, so that's a more significant challenge, and we really think that until we need to find someone who has that experience and we were concerned about bringing lifeguards in who had no experience.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, Jen, thank you for that update, much appreciated. I'm sure the public appreciates it as well. I guess to that extent, has this update, I know you just voted on this last night, will you be pushing that information out to the public?
Yeah, we will be. I just wanted to come before you before I did
Yep.
that, but yep, once we wrap up here, I'm going to put something on the website, we'll send an email blast out, we'll get it out.
Okay.
And people have been calling too, and we've sort of been giving people a kind of a
Heads up, yeah. And could you just repeat those hours, because I was
Sure,
furious.
sorry.
No, it's okay, you said it quickly.
Yep, so the same as Town Hall, Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, 8 to 5. Tuesday, a little bit longer, 8 to 6. And Friday, 7:30 to 12.
Okay. So I'm sure that the Rec Commission discussed this, that, I do think it's unfortunate for those folks who that's their primary sort of cooling off recreational space in the summer, that the weekends are not accessible. So I'd just like to understand kind of the thought around that. I know you said that certainly DPW is going to support for trash collection, so they're not, working maybe those staff hours during the weekends, but what kind of was the basis of the discussion not to open it? Because there aren't lifeguards anyway during the week, so what was the logic?
Right, so we would essentially have to hire somebody, I guess, to come in and open the gate on the weekends, but just backing up. I expected last year when we rolled this plan out to get more pushback about having the gate not open on the weekend, and we didn't get one call. So I explained that to the commission, so it doesn't seem, as far as we've heard, to be an issue for the public where the gate is not open on the weekend. If we hear feedback that more people want the gate open, we'd probably have to either hire somebody, because the people that are going to be opening the gate during the week, it's going to be myself, Josh, or Gretel, so our staff that are here during the week. So on the weekend, I'd probably have to hire somebody to come open and shut the gate.
And the season that these hours would apply is when, please?
After this week through the second week in August, which would be our typical beach season anyway. So the beach is really only open the last week in June through the second week in August, even if we had lifeguards. About 7 weeks.
Other questions?
So I guess I would just say that, I think now that we're facing this second year kind of discussion, I do think, and I'm sure maybe the Rec Commission had that discussion of, like, we've got to kind of figure out a solution. I mean, the good news is Lake Chauncey can be accessed from multiple points, not just the beach, but the beach does offer some, kind of, I guess, a different experience than maybe accessing it from other points. But I do think that, it's a treasured resource, and an amenity, if you will. So I think we've got to kind of look at this a little more broadly, like how do we get past this lifeguard hurdle and, allow, I'll say, better access, while certainly reducing town risk and understanding kind of financial, kind of cost implications. So
I
not
agree.
asking for any action, it's just, I'm hoping for some kind of collaborative discussion between, our board and the rec commission.
I agree, and I think they agree as well that this is, it's a bigger issue now. It wasn't just kind of a fluke year, so. I
Yeah,
agree.
no, but
Yeah.
but I think the good news is we had last year's experience, and we're really
Right.
mirroring that, and it sounded like it went well.
It really did.
Knock on wood.
Thank
So-
you, everyone.
So,
The public
you know,
know.
I think it's a good kind of interim to maybe a different
solution.
approach.
For sure.
I would agree with that, and as far as the door, the gate being locked, I have heard from some residents who said that they wish it was never closed because there's a playground. So even if they're not planning on letting their kids near the water, and there's a pavilion and picnic tables, and so, having more general access to it as a park, I think is somewhat desirable, so.
Yeah.
As part of our ongoing conversations and discussions,
I agree.
for the rec commission to consider that.
Great.
Sean, did you have any comments?
I would just say, Jen, thank you very much. I mean, it's unfortunate, but it makes sense, and I understand. So thank you. And I guess while we have you here, I don't know if you want to give a little shout out for events occurring later this week.
Yes, the block party is Friday at 5:30 down at Bay State. Hope to see everyone there. It's not going to rain.
Absolutely not.
No.
Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. Heard it here.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's terrific, and I appreciate your work you've done on both that and certainly the block party as well. I guess my questions, I echo a lot of what has already been said, but just to further on to it, I also have heard from a number of residents, as I live very close to that beach, in the local area down there, that are interested in having that more accessible. And my questions are, and my desire is to understand if there's a path forward to, first of all, open those gates during the weekend. And I would ask that, is there, my understanding is there are employees on the DPW that are staffed during the weekend. Is there a possibility of getting them a set of keys and having them go down and open it and close it on the weekends for normal sunbathing, warm weather hours? And the second thing in regards to that is, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I know that there are handicap parking lots inside of the fence, and I'm just curious if there are handicap parking over near the pickleball courts.
There are.
There are, okay. I don't know how much those are utilized, but certainly to have that access as close to the beach as possible. I would love to see that gate also opened so that access can be provided through that side as well for those that may want to park right there and get as quickly to the beach as opposed to having to, move across the road. The other point I'll make is that I did have a resident who was actually quite vocal to me in regards to the bathrooms. Her children are older now, but she had indicated that she was not happy with the bathrooms not being open during normally, pretty much all the time. I explained to her the concerns of, maintaining the bathrooms and whatnot. I would hope that we could look into how do we make those accessible, because certainly the porta-johns on the other side of the road, I'll just use the handicapped individuals as an example. I'm at the beach. I got to go all the way back across the road, all the way to the far end of the parking lot to use those, and I don't know if those are actually handicapped.
They are.
They are. Okay, so the question is, how do we make on-the-beach access more accessible to all individuals and truly make that area a fully inclusive environment for our community? I would personally love to see, again, that beach area opened this year as much as possible, so I'd love to see if there's a working solution that could be brought forward through the rec commission, through the town departments to make that happen. And again, I appreciate all your work on this so far, but those are my thoughts.
Just want to acknowledge one comment. We do not have DPW employees that
We
work
don't.
weekends, no.
Okay, all right, so that was my.
So, but I think that Jen said that if it were to come to that, there could be a solution for hiring someone.
Okay.
To open the gate, I know I wouldn't feel comfortable. I've just been a part, with the bathrooms. You wouldn't believe it, but it happens, I know, at Bay State as well. The vandalism and the things that people do in a bathroom that's not attended is just,
Yeah.
I'll spare you the details of what happened the COVID year when we didn't lock those bathrooms. We thought we had it locked right, and we shut the water off people were using them without water. So it's pretty mind-blowing what people will do with a bathroom that's unattended, just that stuff, but then plus, graffiti and damage. We had to install cameras down at Bay State because those bathrooms were getting damage. I don't know what it is about bathrooms, but I don't know, I would not feel comfortable opening those bathrooms. I think it would cause way more problems than this year without staff being
Let
present.
me ask you, you used the example of Bay State. Did the cameras help solve that issue? Was there still ongoing issues?
We don't open the bathrooms at Bay State
Right.
either unless
Okay.
staff are on premise.
Okay. So since we don't have lifeguards at the beach, the idea is if there's no staff on premise, we wouldn't do that. Well, let me still ask that question, is have you seen that kind of, even, staff is there, but maybe they're turned aside, you're not going into the bathroom, you're not watching
Well, we're there to
people?
check, and we have, so when we say staff, it is a custodian that's there, and should a toilet overflow or something, he's there to resolve it immediately.
Yeah.
So it's not left for a week without anybody knowing.
I would ask that if you can, bring this back to the Rec Commission in regards to perhaps a further, maybe a warrant article in the future for supporting the purchase of cameras down at Bay State, at Chauncey Beach, to help be preventative in that measure, because obviously we're facing a period right now where it's difficult to get lifeguarding staff. But that still shouldn't preclude us from making that as available as possible, even under the circumstances of, unfortunately, people doing vandalous things. I just think it's hugely important. It's an asset in the town that we don't really take that great of advantage of. And I'd also say that people on the weekends are having to wheel or get around that fence, and that's dangerous. If you've been down there, you've got to get kind of around the rocks. The other thing that I would ask for, and this is something I think that can be done relatively immediately, is that the pathway from the main entrance that you all open to the playground area, there is a walkway. Well, that walkway is about 50% covered in sand, and I've watched parents multiple times as I've gone for walks around the lake trying to push their baby strollers across that, and it's very difficult. I would love to see the town go down there and clear off that pathway to make that, at least right now, even within the hours we're talking about, more easily accessible. So just some thoughts on how we could move forward and improve that environment in the short term.
Okay.
Sure.
Just a comment, I would take that as suggestions. That's not a board action, that's an individual from the
It's a
board,
suggestion.
so it's,
Noted.
Excellent
so I
point.
appreciate that, but that is a,
And just about the sand, we can, we have Earl Story from DPW, he's down there weekly grooming the beach. I don't know, it sounds like you're there often, but it's awfully windy, so the sand is constantly moving, so it's like, we could clear it, and then in 20 minutes it's back. So just a comment on that, but.
I definitely see that as well.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
your observation is spot on, and thank you, Ian, for clarifying that point. It's, just me.
Noted. No,
speak. So,
absolutely, no, noted.
Thank you very much, Jen.
Comments.
Any other thoughts, comments?
Nope.
Okay. Let's see here. Let's go back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jen.
All right, moving on to item 10, police chief hiring process and town manager. So I'd like to make a motion right out of the gate. I move that the select board utilize an external process and to form a 7-person search committee comprised of 2 select board members, town manager, fire chief, school superintendent, and 2 residents. Can I get a second?
I will second for purpose of discussion.
I will take the liberty to recognize myself for some initial comments. I see no reason to deviate from our time-tested external search process that has been used for every leadership position within recent history, and I feel that it would be a disservice to the town not to support a full external search, as anything less would be based on an assumption with no comparison. The position is simply too important to assume anything. Additionally, changing our process now would set precedents for future hiring opportunities that would hamstring future boards, as there will be significant pressure to only promote from within. Some folks have asked the question of why not do an internal search? Well, in my opinion, you are not going to get but one internal candidate due to the hierarchical structure of our departments. Some other folks have asked the question around what our town charter says, and it states that the town and the town meeting reaffirmed in a 2022 version under section 5.3b, use of search committees, the appointment process for key personnel shall incorporate the use of a search committee, except in the case of a reappointment. The town manager shall be a member of the search committee established to fulfill the position of town council, chief of police, fire chief, or director of the Department of Public Works. An appointing authority may specify the use of search committee for another town employee in the appointing authority's department where a specific search committee process is not prescribed by law. This charter, the town's bylaws, or action of the town meeting in the search committee process shall be determined by the appointing authority. I think the wishes of the community are pretty clear. That said, I do feel, based on his resume and 28-year service to the town, our interim chief is a strong candidate, and I thank him and wish him the best through the process. To more directly address specific current concerns I've heard so far, we received input from the community that external process would be more costly to the town. This is inaccurate simply because as of July 1st, we will not be paying for a deputy chief position during an external process. The anticipated duration of an external search is between 4 and 6 months, which translates to between $52,000 to $78,000 in savings. Now, it's possible and likely that if the board votes for an external process, there will be desire to contract an external assessment center, such as BadgeQuest, which was used for the last police chief at a cost of $7,000. Even if we double or triple that cost, it still falls significantly short of the very real savings. I also congratulate all candidates, current and future, for obtaining recommendations and votes of support. However, this is something that I would expect for all finalists to have, and those that have the best will get a big check mark, in my opinion. An external process provides us the only opportunity to compare those recommendations and votes of support. Another point that has been raised is the 2018 strategic plan goal of developing succession planning. However, in reading the strategic plan, it does not state that there is a requirement or even a preference for promotion. I'm happy to see that past boards instituted succession planning, as it cultivates at least one strong candidate. However, it should never be assumed that an internal candidate be automatically elevated to such an important position. In reviewing recent past select board comments from past meetings, it was not the intention to only promote from within. Many of the past board's comments reflected the exact opposite, supporting the charter. One of many examples was during the last police chief process in 2017, where all present members of the board spoke favorably to a full external process and further commented that it enabled other members of the town, departments, and residents to be part of the process. I ask that the unanimous board support this motion in the best interest of our community, future boards, departments, as well as providing the strongest mandate to the selected candidate having gone through the most rigorous process. Are there other comments from the board?
So I have a question, if I may, of our town manager. I think one of the things that's important for the public to hear, I know we've certainly seen this in our packet, is if, Christy, if you could explain kind of what the options are before the board in terms of hiring processes. So I know that Patrick opened with a motion. He beat me to asking you to present that. If you could explain that, because my comments may follow kind of your explanation of that.
Sure. So to review what we talked about at the June 13th meeting, the board would have 3 options. The first is the external search. I noted in my memo that that would be soliciting candidates throughout Massachusetts or perhaps across the country. This was done, as Patrick noted, for the recent town planner, DPW director, town manager, police chief, and fire chief. The composition and search committee would be at the discretion of the board. The town manager would be on it as required by charter. The search committee would review the applications and conduct preliminary screening interviews. All of that happens in executive session. When Chief Lurie was hired in 2018, the search committee also hired that assessment center. So the committee would be required to narrow down the candidates, and a minimum of 2 would need to come to the board as finalists. That's required under the open meeting law, the open minimum of 2. And then finalists would be interviewed by the board in open session. I do just want to note, just related to the external search and the assessment center, the savings that the town would recognize due to there being one person filling 2 positions would be in salary and wages, so actually could not be used to hire an assessment center. That would need to be a separate cost incurred in an expense budget or an article. the internal search, the board could form a search committee similar to what I just described. This type of search has not been conducted within my tenure with the town, though it's similar to how the police and fire departments conduct their promotional processes, where it's only available to folks working already in these positions. Again, town manager was required to be on that search committee. You would compose the search committee to round out what other members were on that. And again, it would have to be a minimum of 2 candidates recommended to the board as finalists. And then your final option is the promotional process. Understanding that the charter does say that there's a search committee used for this position. And speaking to town council, he noted that the charter is advisory, not directory, and so the board could choose to use a promotional process. This has not been done, as I noted before, though I did note in my memo the reasons that I believe it hasn't been done before, because I don't believe it was an option previously. So there was no deputy position in the police department when Chief Laurie was hired. There was no deputy position in the fire department when Chief Purcell was hired. And then there were no employees in the position, there was no employee in the position of assistant DPW director when Chris Payant was hired as DPW director. Also, all of those processes took place before the strategic plan was completed, related to the community's request for succession planning.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
So, if I may, Patrick, I have to be really candid with the board and with the public, which I always am. I shouldn't have to qualify that. I think the options before us, particularly since we have a very experienced deputy chief who is happy to support, to be interim, are not great ones, because while we have a lot of information that has been provided to us in support of him being interim chief and recommendations to continue in that process, we, the board, in the processes outlined, have zero opportunity to interview him. So we've got a lot of information, but we have no opportunity, and I'll kind of apply my business experience of, if I'm hiring a CEO, I want an opportunity to sit down with that person, ask questions, particularly situational questions that are very relevant to a public safety position. And the process before us doesn't allow that, in the sense of a direct sort of like deputy chief come forward, or 2 members of the board we appoint, have executive discussions with a list of questions. Those 2 members come back with kind of feedback back to the board, and then we make a decision. In the absence of that, candidly, I feel like it would be remiss for me as a member of this board, representing kind of the public, who are very supportive of our deputy chief, but a portion of whom I've only heard from, and a lot who I haven't heard from. And so if we don't have a chance to kind of interview someone for a very important key personnel position, I feel like that's kind of delinquent on my part. That's the only word I can come up with. It might not be the right one. The second thing I'll say is that our town charters, as Patrick has already stated, does set the stage for a search committee, which we have used successfully for our current staff and certainly our outgoing police chief. And we've been very, very happy with, or I have been, I think the town has been, with those results. And those members, with the exception of our outgoing police chief, still remain on and are thriving in the organizations the departments they've built. So as much as I don't kind of love an external process and the time that it will take, although I think we can shorten it, both in the size of the committee members, which I've given some thought to, and hopefully the process, I feel like it is the best process given the options that are before us. So thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Sure. So I have a little bit of a different take on things. With the work done with the public and prior board's acceptance of the strategic plan, the whole point of creating succession plans is to have people ready, willing and able to step in and move up the ranks. And so when I think about a promotion process and saying, well, that, we've never done that before. Okay, well, we've never had deputies in the public safety departments or a sitting assistant director in DPW at the time. What does that look like? There's nothing that precludes us from designating a subset of the board as a search committee and interviewing the candidate for promotion. I mean,
That's not true.
That's not
I'm
accurate.
sorry.
so,
If it is, then please tell me it is.
No, it's not. So if you create a subsection of the board, you're
Okay.
essentially creating a search committee requiring you to bring,
okay.
Search.
But this board could interview. Option 3, promotion.
right,
There could be a public Q&A session that this board conducts.
right. Yes, you could do that.
As if we were, as CEOs of the, in that role, if someone were thinking of moving up. And then there would be a vote as to yes or no, correct?
Well, so, right, so in the materials, we had talked previously about the public process or how the process would relate to the public if you did a promotional process. So if you chose the promotional process, you could certainly ask for a presentation or ask some questions, but you're essentially choosing to promote the deputy.
It's a foregone conclusion.
Well, that's the process. A promotional process is a promotion.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay. So, because I was thinking the promotional process would mirror other promotional processes where even
What do you mean?
succession plan. So, where there'd be an interview and then a yes/no vote, and it's like, if the promotion isn't going to happen, then you would need to do a search.
Yes, you could do that.
So you could do
I,
that.
I did note in my, I guess candidly, because it's in the packet, I did note that there is risk to choosing a process and then choosing a different process.
To that, I cycled all of these through, and if we're going to go through that process, why not, like we did with our town manager, who we had some experience with, albeit in my personal experience, not a lot. I knew Christy, but didn't know her as a town manager in that capacity. And we did an external process, and I really feel like it certainly, the best candidate came through. We've seen that now, and it really kind of elevated, and if you will, kind of legitimized her role and position as town manager. If we go through another process, I feel like from a town perspective and a department perspective, that could have negative feedback as opposed to a process that I think the town is familiar with as it relates to other search committees and similar positions, in fact, the police chief. So why not go through an external process and, kind of bring forward the best candidates, one of whom.
I guess my view on that, the town asked us to have department heads create succession plans. And if you have succession plans, then the assumption would be that you allow people to succeed into the position unless there's a reason not to. And that's, that the town asked us to rethink the way we developed internal talent and career paths, and how people would move up into the leadership roles in key departments. So, I'm looking at it from the strategic plan and the town saying, well, we'd prefer there were succession plans and we have the deputy roles involved that says, okay, we have a succession plan for the next chief of police, for the next fire chief, for the next director of DPW that we would use unless there was a somewhat compelling reason not to have the succession plan execute.
So I guess, my point is around the succession plan again is that it has another purpose, and that is really to build that, that capability by building a strong candidate within. That shouldn't guarantee, especially in positions such as this, that they are automatically elevated. And I think it's dangerous if we start to set that example of automatically elevating because there was a succession, of a deputy or of an assistant or whatnot. I think that, again, I think the community definitely expects as open and transparent a process as possible. And I think of that similar to what we did with the planning board, where, we had a committee that went out and did the search, and the best candidate was moved forward, and, that was inclusive as many representations across the community as possible. And that was a good thing. So I don't think there's any harm. And I would also suggest that, back in February 19, when the town manager search happened, there was I believe, a motion to recommend that the interim town manager be one of the final 3 candidates. I certainly would entertain that. I think that in good faith, I think that our current interim chief is a great candidate, and I think that we should give him that ability to be part of that finalist process. But I think it's still important that we go out and identify as many candidates as possible through that process. And Ian, I think you had some comments.
Yeah, I firmly support a promotional process here. I think what past boards have done, there's reasons that happened. We don't have to do what past boards do. The question I had, which was brought up, that was answered the last time, was really from legal counsel, is because our charter says it, are we required by charter to do it? We've got basically the affirmation that is not, that we're not required, it's advisory. I echo a lot of what Alan said. I think one of the goals of the strategic plan was to promote the succession planning, and one of the things, as I highlighted with our current police chief, Chief Laurie right now, is one of the things that I really thanked him for, was he came in and said that's what he was going to do, and I think he exhibited it. He put our deputy chief in the position to demonstrate to us as a board, to his department, to the town, the capabilities that he had to be considered for this position. I think to the point of setting a precedent that this happens all the time now, I don't think that sets a precedent. It's still the board's decision of what to do. Each time will be something we look at, and if we believe that there is not a viable promotional candidate that for any reasons, and the majority of the board decides that, I don't think we're setting precedent by doing that. It's tough not to take this to the individual, but as an individual, I think that our deputy chief and our incoming interim chief has demonstrated the skills and capabilities for me personally that I would expect in a police chief. I have seen him at work. I have talked to him. I think I do rely on the recommendations that we've got from numerous folks. The fact that we had unanimous vote by both unions, I think, is huge. I think that the information we have from the state police officer was on the search committee for Chief Laurie, to me, weighs highly. So all it did was, for me, was reinforced what I have seen and what I feel. And I think I'm worried the opposite way, that going out to a public search now, we should just say that we don't care about succession planning. Let's not even worry about it, because I just think, if it doesn't mean anything, then, yeah, it's good to have, but I think this is an opportunity that we have. So I appreciate your views. I appreciate everyone's views. I disagree. I think we have a strong candidate. I think that there are some potential significant repercussions that we should consider as a town of not going through with a promotion at this time. I think that the deputy deserves it. To me, he has shown everything that I need to see to recommend his promotion to chief, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you, Ian. Sean, did you have any comments?
Thank you, Patrick. I would echo a little bit of what Ian said. You know, I think each decision needs to be looked at individually. You know, so I don't know that whatever we do here is precedent for any other situation going forward. And let me say this next statement, no one has said anything in opposition to what I'm going to say here, but I think the current direction of the police department is important, right? We've seen the strides they've made, body-worn cameras at the station, and I think, we want to see, or I want to see, the police department continue in that direction, which then would lead me to believe that an internal candidate and someone as strong as Todd Minardi would make sense to kind of continue the current direction of the police department. Based on the recommendations received broadly, I would kind of agree with Ian in terms of the promotion process.
All right, I guess.
Hopefully you heard that.
Yes.
Yes, we heard you. Thanks, Sean.
And I guess I would add, if you're suggesting that in an external search that, Deputy Chief Minardi was guaranteed a finalist position, then why are we even doing the external search? Because you're sending a message to anyone who might apply for the job that there's an internal candidate who we believe is qualified for the position, who already has the relationships with other town department heads and staff, with the department leadership, sergeants and lieutenants, with the rank and file officers, with the community. And so I think, does it set a precedent? No, the fact that we're having this conversation means we're not saying it has to be this way. I would assume the next chief position that opened up, we'd have the same conversation on what process we wanted to use and make a determination whether the promotion was appropriate at that point in time, given the state of the department, given the skill set of the deputy, and make the determination at that point in time. So I'm at this point in time, given where the department is at, where it's going, where the town is at, where we're going, the skill set, the history, the experience we have with our now interim police chief as well as deputy police chief, and really an effectively working succession plan, not just at the deputy chief level, but we've seen it, throughout the department at the lieutenant and the sergeant level as well, that at this point in time for this position, the promotional process is our best way forward.
Any other comments?
I said
Sure, go ahead.
one additional, and I probably didn't, was it? Oh, about what I said is, if we don't do this, what I say about succession, I probably didn't state it as, I know I didn't state it as maybe eloquently as I could, and I may not state it eloquently here, but I think when you have a candidate like we have right now that I firmly believe deserves the promotion here, I do think there's some precedent setting there that says to other employees in other departments that, hey, there's an opportunity for me here from a promotion process, that if I step up my game and show that I am deserving of a promotional opportunity, that is a opportunity that can come to me. And I think that can strengthen an already strong departments we have in town, but really, so it kind of sets a precedent that we're willing as a town to reward those that deserve those positions and set that as an opportunity that we put out there. And it's an opportunity. It's not a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination. That is a board decision. And we can't bind future boards. That's going to be future boards' decisions, which, most likely, the next time this comes up, not all 5 of us, maybe none of us will be there. But I do think, again, going back to strategic plan, we put it in place. Yes, I think it strengthens just by having this concept of succession planning, but I think also rewarding those that deserve it. And I'll echo it again. I think that the deputy and interim chief Minardi absolutely deserves it, and I think it can be really a good sign for the employees of this town of, you do things right, you work hard, and show us what you can do, that there's that opportunity for you for a promotional process. So
Thank you. I'll just say, I want to clarify a point I made earlier as well. I think that the interim chief has every, he's got a tremendous background, and I think he is an excellent candidate for the position. So I just want to make sure that's clear. But I do want to, I feel it's important that we observe what I consider to be the wishes of the community. And you raised that point a couple of times about succession planning. So I've got to ask the question, do you ever foresee a point in time where a past chief, a past leader of a department, as they're departing, would ever say that they're not going to recommend the person that was in their succession plan? To me, I don't think that would ever happen, because it would be an admission of failure on that succession planning that had been done over the years while they're in that department.
No, I absolutely agree with you, but that's one voice. I don't think if that was the only voice we heard here, that would be a consideration, that just because the outgoing manager of that position was the only one or one of few, and there was, disagreement. I think what, I've seen here, and again, it's not just recommendations, it's also observations, but the recommendations were tremendous, and I'm not surprised by that, but I think, sorry, to answer your question, no, it's not just because Chief Laurie recommended it. That is,
yeah, no, not at all. But I'm just taking your points. Let me make a point here. So, from my perspective as a board member, I have had very little interaction, but I certainly look forward to interaction with our interim chief over the coming months as he rolls into that position. But I've had very little interaction with him. So, as a board member, I would like that opportunity to understand him and be able to weigh him against other candidates that I can't in a promotional process. Can't do it. It's not there. So to me, it's a little bit flying blind here. And while I can take all those recommendations, and again, as I said in my statement, I fully expect that if we did an external process, that we would likely get candidates that maybe have some, maybe they have all, or maybe they have none of those same recommendations. Well, certainly that would probably eliminate them off of the finalist list, right? So that's the process, is to weed out individuals based on recommendations, votes of support, their resume, all of those things, and we're not being given the opportunity if we go to a promotion process. And I think it's super important in this position to do that. And I'm hoping I'm making a difference in this decision here, because as a board member, I feel like we're kind of being left out, especially for a new board member. Even though I've lived in the community for 40 years, I feel like I'd be left out of this decision process. So I appreciate the comments. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, if I may. Sean, did you want to go? It's always hard to be
Sean,
that guy remotely.
Yeah, thank you, Shelby. I'll put my hand down. So I would also say that I think we're talking about precedent here, and we have a very strong internal candidate. I think we've all are in agreement on that fact. And if we choose then to go with an external search, we're sort of setting the precedent that that is the only way to go about this process.
That is the way it's been done in the past.
Right.
I would say the problem with, sorry.
That
Sorry, go ahead, Sean, you broke up there.
No, go ahead.
No, please finish your thought.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. And just saying that would then feel like the only process. If we went with an external search, I would feel like that we would set a precedent that that was really the only process we would ever use going forward.
Yeah, no, I get where you're coming from, but it is the process, it's the time-tested process we've used for all current positions and senior leadership positions, and to Shelby's earlier point, we've been successful. You know, I would say, you know, in regards to the promotional process, to me, that would be a new process for the community, and you know, I'm not saying that this is the case right now, but certainly in the future, in my opinion, the message that it sends to employees is, hey, if I've gone through that process, that's great. You've learned through that succession planning how to do that job, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee that you're going to get that job, because you should be held be held to an interview process to make sure, again, you're the best possible candidate for the community. And if we don't do that process, I'm flying blind and making assumptions here. So, Shelby?
Yeah, so just a couple thoughts on the succession planning. You know, I think, and I hope we all agree, that the importance of that succession planning is not just at the highest ranks and levels. I mean, it's looking at someone who comes in as a, I don't know, whatever the right language is, line worker, administrative person, that they have the ability to develop the skills and talents and potentially, you know, educational and training needs to elevate themselves through the organization. So I look at succession planning very broadly, you know, and not just sort of at the level we're talking about for this position. The other thing that I would point out to the board is that the charter clearly states that the chief of police shall appoint all employees of the police department. So the current, everyone in those ranks, including the current deputy chief, but I think it's interim police chiefs, but let's talk about the deputy chief position, is an appointment of the police chief, who was our appointment. But we did not have any authority, say, input to that appointment. And so I feel like when we think about the role of this board and what authority we do have, authorities that we have that are clearly spelled out in the charter, this one is a critical one for key personnel. And I think not only is it key, but it's how we do that and the process by which we do it. And I know this is very difficult for anyone watching this, particularly Chief Minardi sitting there and for staff hearing this. I just feel like the fairest, broadest process, because while we've heard from lots of people that have connections with the town, have experience with him, have expertise in law enforcement, have provided input, that represents, I don't know how much of the town. It doesn't represent the totality of the town. I'm not we've already talked about that a process would not be some broad public process. That's not what I'm suggesting. But by bringing in a couple of other residents that we've done in the past with our other appointments, it broadens the aperture a little bit. It brings in, it just, I think to Patrick's point, it allows us to kind of do a comparison. I hate to say that because we're talking about human lives. This sounds weird, but it allows us to kind of compare and say, yeah, here's what all these people bring. What is best for Westborough? And I want to believe that our current deputy chief is best for Westborough, but I just don't have a comparison. And the process does not allow me or any board member here to ask what I think are critically important situational questions that, this is a highly visible position, it's highly stressful, so on and so forth. Think of all the social unrest that, law enforcement has gone through. We have no ability to kind of, just even get a sense of like, how would someone stepping into this position handle this situation? And I would expect an external search process to be the best way to do that. So I made my point. I don't think I have anything else unless I'm responding to the board, but I would ask the board to, strongly consider the motion that is before us, as I respectfully, I believe you are, and if we're not ready to make that motion, that we, or we're not ready to support that maybe we sleep on it until our next meeting.
Thank you, Shelby. I'll also just point out, I think Ian brought up or touched on an issue of potential morale issues in town as a result of perhaps this discussion and perhaps an external process. And I just believe the past can provide us some guidance here. In that, I am unaware of morale or mass exodus issues at any time resulting from previous senior level appointments such as town manager, fire chief, or the previous police chief, where both internal and external candidates were hired. I'm not naive. Unfortunately, there will be folks that are happy and unhappy with any selection, and I hope that there is zero attrition or morale issues. However, I believe it will be a similar rate no matter what. That said, I would encourage you all to respect the process and support whatever candidate is chosen. I'd also say that one thing I'm also concerned with is any inaccurate community perception. Something I know we as a leadership team are dedicated to professionalism and the law within our power to dispel. An external search with a search committee similar to the past would likely incorporate ad hoc residents and therefore is another opportunity to quell any misperceptions on the process. Any other thoughts?
I guess when we talk about, we've always done it this way, in part that's because we didn't have a choice, right? And so the analogy I'll use is people will say, gee, there were so few divorces in the 1950s. Well, yeah, because if there was a divorce, the woman couldn't get a credit card or sign a lease or get a mortgage. So how much was because there was more love in marriages back then, or simply because practically the impact of it, right? So yes, historically there have always been external searches. We didn't have succession plans. We didn't have a method by which to develop and have the talent ready for promotion to be an option. And I would say even just to do an internal search to be an option. There was no choice. If you needed, and we can talk, extensively about my view of the town manager search that was done when Christie was hired. And the decision was made early on to do an external search, and then there was discussion about giving preference to a candidate. And to me, that takes the process. And for the same reason we disbanded the charter review committee on form of government was disbanded, so that when in recruiting a town manager, we wouldn't be telling people we're recruiting a town manager, but we might not need one, right? You get different response to the recruit. So I think the strategic desire to have succession planning, to have internal candidates ready to step into leadership. It changed by design. It was done with the understanding that would at times change the process from historical precedent. And so that's where my thought is at this point.
It's an interesting interpretation of that, because nowhere that I saw in any of the documentation, charter, strategic plan, notes from previous board meetings that were provided, nowhere does it say that there was an expectation that would be the standard going forward. So I certainly, again, I'll echo that, I'll just repeat that I see the value in succession planning. It is hugely important, but it should in no way be a guarantee. And I would just say, when I think about the vote that we had earlier tonight around the interim police chief's contract, I question what was the point of that? Because if we vote for not doing an external process and we go to a promotion process, there's really not a lot of purpose for having an internal contract. We are essentially saying that the deputy chief or interim police chief is going to be our police chief, with no ability, to Shelby's point, no ability to weigh that candidate, no matter how good against other candidates. Any other thoughts?
I want to agree with what you said first,
Okay.
not what you said at the end, but I agree. There's nothing that you see in there that says that this is the way we are going forward. And I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's what I said before. It gives us the opportunity to do it differently, and I think that is something that we sent that message to the town. It was supported as a board. I think that is an opportunity that we didn't have before. We didn't have deputies before. We've evolved as a town. Westborough has evolved. We talk about that all the time. I think this is a good step and a good opportunity. It is not saying now that every time this happens, that is the way we're going. I'm not saying that. I will not say that, because I think that is still the board's. We are the hiring position. It's our decision here as a board of 5 to decide which way to go. I think we have the opportunity, because we put things in motion through our strategic plan to allow for this opportunity. I think this is, that we have a candidate that, personally for me, I don't see that we need to go to an external search process. I'm sure there'll be other instances where I say, absolutely, we should go to an external search process, because, that I may not believe that we have a strong candidate there. But I do think that in this situation, we've given ourselves the opportunity. I think we have the best candidate here. And again, personally, I'm supportive of the promotion process.
Can I
Thank you.
just,
Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that in talking about the charter and the requirement for the search, when I spoke to town council, they said that, it's in my memo, but I just wanted to state here, the chief executive body, which is the select board, can decide that it's not required to be followed under a specific set of circumstances, given that does not have to be strictly followed if you decide in the best interest of this town that moving forward, doing something different is under a specific set of circumstances. So that what I was trying to get to is, in my agenda item form, I've noted some specific set of circumstances. So I just want to acknowledge that in terms of the concern about setting precedent, you would need to have a specific set of circumstances to not move forward with the charter. And in this case, I've identified 5 circumstances that you could use in terms of why you would move forward with a promotion.
Right. Thank you, Christy. I mean, which I appreciate that work, and certainly town council providing that guidance. But per my comments, I find many of those circumstances to be not entirely relevant, for lack of a better word, because I think, again, the heart of this is I feel that we are, again, hamstringing this board. We are reducing our authority in a certain way, and we are not doing what the town has desired in the past and moving forward. Let's be clear. Promotion is the exception to the process. It is not the norm. So, and we as a board in the past have made many votes, whether it be town meeting warrant article movements in the warrant, to other ones that we say this is the precedent. This has worked for us. We have to have a really strong reason to change what we do. And while I agree, and I'll say it again, I feel that our interim police chief is a very strong candidate. I just feel it's a disservice to not go through a full process on behalf of the community. That being said, any final comments?
Yeah, just one final one. I think that I would just ask the board to contemplate that for as many comments and information that we've received, which have been exceptional for Todd Menardi, and I recognize those in all that he brings to the table. I think it's fair to say that that represents some portion of the town, but not the entire town, because we just don't know. And so we are representatives of the entire town, not just those that interact with us through however they choose to interact with us. And so by having a, kind of a more, I'll call it transparent process rather than just kind of promotional, where in a promotional, we have no sort of opportunity before the hire for the public to get to know Mr. Minardi more, and the process that is in the motion before us allows for that. So that's my final comment, and I greatly appreciate the patience of those in the audience, as well as this board. Not patience, but appreciate kind of the healthy dialogue we've had here, because I think it's important and it's thoughtful. So thank you.
Any other final comments? I'll just make one other note I forgot to mention before. One of the things that I also think is important about the external process is I don't believe we got any feedback from the current fire chief or the school superintendent on the position, and I feel it's important that those two roles participate in this, and if we go with an internal promotion, they're not going to have any ability to share with us what they think is the best candidate. So, and I'm not saying that they wouldn't support Chief Minardi, but I think it's important that we hear and that they are part of the process, and right now, we're not there. And actually, if you like, sure, if you would like, Chief, I'd be more than happy to take that from you now.
So I've done a fair amount of assessment centers in the last 5 years, and what I'll probably say, I validate everybody's concerns. I truly do. But I think that if you take a step back, the decision to go in or out is a very, very heavy decision. And oftentimes, and we're talking about another candidate, the candidate. It's really not anything about the interim chief. It's not anything about the outside candidate. It's about the organization. And you have to really, when you sit back and make a decision about going in or out, is do I have any issues in my current organization? Do I have culture issues? Do I have leadership issues? Do I have transparency issues? And do I not have a candidate? And I would say that you probably have an unbelievable caliber of employees at the police department that you don't need to go outside for decades, probably 3 decades, is my firm opinion. For what it's worth, I do think the interim chief is a remarkable candidate, but it's really, no disrespect, it's really not about that decision. It's about introducing somebody from the outside into something that you may not be unhappy with, and that is your biggest risk. So if you're happy with culture and transparency and leadership, and you're getting what you want out of your police department, then taking somebody from the outside is always an unknown, and it's risky, and that could be completely disrupted, which then has a trickle-down effect through your organization. That really is the biggest risk, in my opinion. And then the secondary risks are, if I have nothing to look forward to in my own organization going forward, now you promote turnover. So there are a lot of great candidates in that department for up-and-coming leadership positions. If they don't think that they're going to be able to stay here because we're always going to look nationally, then they're probably going to start shopping at other departments. And that's not something we want either. We want people, they are well intertwined in the community. I can't keep up with the police department and the amount of the community impact programs that they go to. They are definitely out there. They are definitely interacting. They're very approachable. And our relationship with them right now is probably more solid than it's ever been from the fire department perspective. So I'm not here to endorse or not endorse a specific candidate. I'm endorsing their own organization. And that's just one perspective. I think that I listened to everything that y'all had to say. So if you really want my opinion, I think I would step back for the 30,000-foot view and look at the police department and say, they got accredited, they have staffing up, they are physically present, they look sharp, they're smart. We changed the contract, the town changed the contract to promote a better caliber of applicants, successful, and they're really doing everything that the manager asks of them, in my opinion. So that's, if you wanted it, be a little overboard.
Yeah, Chief, just to say, your comments are always appreciated, and I certainly respect your view and your experience with this. I would just add one thing to your comment, I think, is that it is certainly about the department, but it even more so is about the community and making sure that we have the best possible candidate in this, through this process. And, Chief Minardi may be that best candidate, and I suspect he is, but I don't know. That's my feeling on it. So, I appreciate your feedback and time on that.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Chief.
final thoughts, or? Sean, anything? No? Okay.
Ready to vote?
Okay. Then I'll look for a vote. We'll do roll call. Sean?
So can we confirm, because the motion was a while ago. Can
Yep.
we
So
restate the motion and-
let me repeat the motion. I move that the Select Board utilize an external process and to form a 7-person search committee comprised of 2 Select Board members.
Wait, that was not part of the original motion. It was?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I write it right here. Yeah, I move, so let me read it again.
Sorry.
I move that the Select
Okay.
Board utilize an external process and to form a 7-person search committee comprised of 2 Select Board members, Town Manager, Fire Chief, School Superintendent, and 2 residents.
And I second the motion. I apologize if I didn't hear the committee composition, but I second that. That's fine.
Sean, just because we've gone in the order all night, I'm going to look to you first.
Sure. Keough, no.
Johnson, no.
Edinburgh, no.
Welch, yes.
Marshall, yes.
Okay, that fails, 2 to 3. Can I entertain another motion, or do we want to move to a future meeting to discuss more, or to think about more?
I mean, my feeling, but I think there was a request from Shelby to, if this didn't go in that vote, to sleep on it, I would suggest we move.
Yeah.
I mean, personally, I'm ready to make a motion, but I do respect the wishes, so.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've heard a lot here tonight, and again, appreciate
Yes, it's good.
the like views, the divergent views. I appreciate our fire chief coming forward in what is a difficult situation or stressful situation, and sharing that perspective of the 30,000-foot view. So that's very helpful. So I think we should be prepared to move on a process that hopefully we can have unanimous support on. That's always a good feeling, particularly in these situations at our next meeting. That would be my recommendation.
I appreciate both comments there. Thank you.
Just wanting to add that as you're thinking through some of the things that you've heard tonight, if you want to reach out, if there's anything I can provide in terms of additional information or ideas around what a different process looks like. Some of you have reached out to me, and I've asked questions of town council as needed, so happy to continue to do that.
I guess I would just reiterate what already sounds like a very broken record, and if there's any way for there to be some sort of, even under the promotional process that's been supported by 3 of the members here, to have some sort of interview of, by a portion of the board, or, and again, I don't know what executive session allows for or doesn't, or publicly, if that's a promotional process. I think before that hire is made, I think it's very important. So I don't know what the guardrails are, but
Sure.
let's get as creative legally as we can.
All right, thank you. I certainly do appreciate all the dialogue, and it certainly has given me some points to consider, and I look forward to future conversation at a board meeting. With that in mind, I guess we can move on to the next topic, and I certainly appreciate both chiefs being here tonight to participate in this discussion. So I think the next topic is long-term capital plan presentation from our town manager and finance director.
here, yeah. This is what everyone's been waiting for. Yes, no, please. So as the board's aware, we've been talking for a long time about creating some sort of long-term capital plan, really focused on, learning from all the projects that we've done recently, and really concerned with how we continue to incur debt and how that might look going forward. So really trying to plan out long-term capital projects as acknowledged as future needs by departments. So something that's new in the last 2 years with our capital plan is that we've asked departments to provide some information about what they might see long-term. So we do a 5-year capital plan. I think that information is pretty robust in terms of getting quotes, expressing need, and then asking departments to look out an additional 10 years to identify things that they might see as coming in the future. That's probably what we had. So we use that information to start discussions around how the town might better prepare for some of these items. And so what you have in your packet is an amended comprehensive fiscal management policy, which would really sort of outline how we might go forward with some of these projects. So I have a few slides. So finance team, myself, Kim, Leah, John and Linda met to kind of talk about how we could better plan out some of these things in the future. So the changes that you see in the comprehensive fiscal management policy are specific to capital planning. Previously, we had identified borrowing as an opportunity for proposals that were $100,000 or more. When we look at our historical or more recent historical use of free cash, and other revenues, we're not finding ourselves borrowing at that low of a threshold. So we have proposed that the threshold be $750,000, at which point you might entertain a borrow. That's really consistent with what we've done. We actually, just recently at the annual town meeting, we actually had a free cash article for over $1 million, which is sort of an outlier in terms of looking at our historical spending, but really acknowledging that our free cash position has allowed us to not borrow or not add to our borrowing. So changing that, then discussion of debt exclusion. So obviously some of our larger projects exceed that $750,000, but really here we're talking about building projects, renovation, acquisitions, expansion. So fire station, town hall, Forbes, Fails, library proposal, all of those things would fall into that category. And so currently in our comprehensive fiscal management policy, we have this discussion about debt exclusion and how it would be applied when a project is estimated to cause our debt to go over 10% of our budget, which makes sense related to the parameters of debt incurred in our policy. So we say that 7.5% of our budget for debt is really where we want to be, but 10% is really our ceiling. So if you're over 10%, then it really should go to debt exclusion. The challenge is that you don't know what that 10% number is when you're first introducing a project. So once you are ready to come to town meeting, that's really when Leah is asked to do this calculation. And as we've learned when we talked about debt exclusion for Fails or the library, it's really too late. Because once you're starting to discuss the possibility of a debt exclusion, you want to make sure that we're educating the public about it, that you have the time to sort of state your position and the need for the project, and really helping the community understand how debt exclusion will work, especially given the fact that we haven't had to do them in a very long time. So the idea was that rather than doing a percentage threshold, we would do a certain dollar threshold, because you really understand the estimated cost of a project much sooner than you would understand that percentage. We have not arrived at what that number is. We have talked at finance team level, so all of the folks I mentioned before, plus the chairs of the select board, the advisory finance committee, school superintendent, about you know, what that threshold would look like. And so we're still trying to work through that. We're also trying to work through sort of the process and and the advice we might receive from town council related to using the debt exclusion when we're not required to. So a community that's up against 2.5 needs to use the debt exclusion sometimes to purchase a fire truck or do some other things that Westborough just does not need to do. So we just want to understand how those votes would work, how that and how town meeting might respond, and just be prepared for that. But really looking at what that dollar threshold is so that we can avoid people getting kind of to the finish line with a project and then being surprised by that percentage given that current fiscal year's budget. Capital Stabilization Fund is something that we are proposing, so that's a new addition to the policy, though I would say that we have used it in the past. We created a Capital Stabilization Fund around, actually we created it around funding the cemetery, right? And then also fire apparatus, because we saw that coming and we saw that as being something that was going to be very expensive several years ago. And so we were putting money into this capital stabilization account and drawing from it as needed. Still requiring, like other stabilization accounts, a town meeting vote to expend money from that stabilization. So the capital stabilization account would be for all capital, as the way that we're proposing it, so not for a specific department or proposal. And it would be funded through the tax levy. So that's something that's what we did previously. It's a way for the community to save for large projects that we see coming forward. So we're proposing that it would be funded at $800,000 a year, but we would use a graduated approach over multiple years, similar to what we've done recently with OPEB, where we funded it partially with reserves, and then over time expect that it would be fully on the levy. And then this type of funding would be specific to things over $750,000 that were more maybe maintenance projects of current infrastructure. So really good examples of this that it's on our current capital plan, our school roof projects. Those are a $4 to $5 million range estimated. So different things like that. And then anything 25,000 to 750,000 would be funded through the use of free cash, potentially the tax levy, depending on what the project is, though that's not sort of our traditional approach. And that would be limited to that 1 to 1.5% of the general fund operating budget. That 1 to 1.5% currently exists within the comprehensive fiscal management policies. It's not clear currently that we're talking about the general fund budget. But we want to make it clear because we're not talking about enterprise funds, because that's a whole other funding source related to retained earnings. And then available revenues, so that's where retained earnings might fund something in this range through country club retained earnings, stormwater, water, sewer, things like that.
That was just an update. No, we just added the language in there for this because of the stormwater. Enterprise fund is new, so we just added those items to available revenues. They weren't listed prior, right? Because they weren't in existence prior.
So this, should I go backwards?
Should, just when you mentioned available revenues, would the community preservation, that wouldn't be in available?
No.
I mean, it's separate. It's separate.
Is separate.
Yep,
and
okay.
the CPC has
manage that.
Rule
Yep.
over that. So
Yep.
I mean, it certainly could be an available fund
Yep.
for a capital project,
But not in the
but
same.
not necessarily.
Okay, thanks.
So I would think that the capital committee wouldn't direct a project to the CPC.
They might recommend.
They might recommend,
Right.
but, you know.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Yep, okay.
Good point.
This slide really speaks to what I was saying previously about the capital stabilization fund and how that would work. So again, we use requests through FY 2037. And so we've created this slide here that shows how we would envision this working. So When we look at what we currently have on the long-term capital plan, the top there is that 5-year plan, and the bottom is the long-term. They're all the same projects, but just looking at how that would be funded, so you can see that as we build up the fund, then we would schedule the project, build up the fund, schedule the project, being able to pay for some of these projects as we save for them.
That's very helpful.
Have we seen that structure used in other municipalities? The creation, the capitalization, kind of this rolling invest, use.
So there's definitely been a lot, kind of a push with the Department of Revenue to have a lot of stabilization funds.
Okay.
So there are other communities that
Yep.
are
Okay.
using dedicated stabilization
Yep.
funds.
Okay.
Because now you can have dedicated
Got it.
stabilization
Okay,
funds.
thanks. And I know we have some experience.
I would add that as we talked about, I think, at annual town meeting, when we talked about the use of free cash on items that are not capital items and how that could impact us, and then we looked at other communities who don't have free cash to purchase their capital items. The other communities might not necessarily be in the financial position to be funding savings.
Yeah, right.
The question about the stabilization fund. We have a stabilization fund for the property tax from Delaware Chauncey Lake as part of the debt strategy. Those funds are currently using to pay, if I remember correctly, pay off debt, contribute and eventually pay off the debt for all of the capital projects that were bonded up through and including the Fales project.
Mm-hmm.
And my understanding is the intent was, as all of those projects came off borrows, that would be a capital stabilization fund for this type of project. Would
Right.
this fund and that fund merge at that point?
This is
or-
my next slide.
So 2037 or 35, depending on the magic?
Yeah, I know.
That's, because that stabilization fund, one of my favorite things that we've done. I mean, it was
Yeah.
an awesome idea.
Yeah.
A great idea to
Yep.
manage that part of the budget, so.
So to Alan's point, we do, so there's a couple of things a couple caveats to this plan. One is that we know that there are a couple upcoming significant or high-cost capital projects that we would not be able to save for because the need is more immediate. So I'll show that. Also, at some point, that capital improvement fund, which is the Pulte fund, the intent is that it will start to grow. The challenge is that it's not going to grow as initially projected because we have added borrowing. And I think we all understand that. So as we continue to add borrowing, that pushes that growth of the capital improvement fund out further. And so that's another reason why this capital stabilization fund, taking care of some of these items that we might otherwise borrow for, is a positive impact to the town. Also, that $1 million project I mentioned that we funded through free cash was really in consultation with our financial advisor, who said it's better to use your reserves on this type of project than to continue to add to your borrowing, because our borrowing is high. But this is a list of those projects that I mentioned. So you can see that the top 3 are ones that we anticipate coming up in the next few years that might be a borrow. And this Milk Fisher Church is supposed to be 10 million, not 1 million. And then the ones in the future might be capital improvement fund. The reason that we put the capital improvement fund, so those might be capital improvement fund ones, because then we're getting into 2032 and sort of later out years. One thing that we really want to acknowledge is that we're just starting to collect this information from different departments. And so specifically the school department has recently done a building assessment. So I think we really expect to see maybe a clearer list of what their capital priorities are related to their buildings, because they do have so many. And so it'll be sort of easier to map out, I think, given the information that we expect to receive from all departments in the upcoming year. So I think that's my last slide. I think going off of what I just said, creating this very long-term schedule also forces some additional sort of strategic planning or thinking about what your department might need in the future. Because if you're not in the schedule, it's going to be difficult to get into the schedule, right? Once we've really created that schedule. And the schedule has to do with the growth of that stabilization fund, the falling off of debt. I mean, really the growth of the capital improvement fund, really working through all of those different sort of variables.
Can you go back to the other slide, the one before while we're talking?
Yep.
Thanks, appreciate it.
We also were, as part of that discussion, have discussed internally the 5-year capital plan and the need to really look at it as a 5-year plan. So currently, folks will provide their 5-year capital needs. The capital expenditure planning committee will review it, put it on a 5-year schedule, put forward the 1-year capital budget. What we would endeavor to have happen is that even though you can only fund that first year, that 5-year plan is really looked at as a 5-year plan, meaning that the only changes would happen if there was something extraordinary and unforeseen, where a department had to move something around or add something to the plan.
First, real quick, I'll just say thank you. I appreciate the work on this. I think it's great that it's been brought forward. Go ahead, Alan.
So, moving to this longer-term schedule, saying, well, the 5-year plan is really not a 5-year prioritization with a 1-year plan. It's a 5-year plan. Moving towards this longer, you would expect that when we complete a building renovation, for example, and it's like, okay, we know in 20 years or 22 years the HVAC system isn't going to need it, that there's some, rate of inflation. We say if it was $1 million now, in 20 years it's going to be 1.6 million, and put a placeholder in further out for managing how much we're going to need in the fund, in the stabilization fund, and the improvement fund, potentially borrow or potentially debt exclusion. So that's, I think it's a great direction, because that provides, long-term view. I mean, we know, even though we just settled things with the rooftop on Forbes, those units, that they have a lifespan.
Yeah.
Right.
And the lifespan is within the duration of this capital project schedule.
Right.
So it would start showing up and really give you, that long-term view to make decisions on, should we start saving now? How much, good stab at a number, 800,000 a year, but and ramping up to that, but looking forward, saying, well, how much should we be saving up now versus the potential risk on the cost of borrow and the impact that has.
Right, because we don't have, right, and then I think that 800,000 was sort of based on what we know right now in terms of what projects would fit into what we would foresee the capital stabilization being used for. It's sort of a game changer once the capital improvement fund starts growing at a rate higher than our debt budget, right? So at that point, this would definitely have to be revisited. Do you even need the capital stabilization fund? What's the capital improvement fund used for? So all of those things, but currently, the way we currently use that fund and how we're trying to manage our current debt costs, this would just be able to to cover those additional sort of smaller maintenance projects. What you're not seeing on here are things that we do know are coming, right? Because they would fall into that debt exclusion category, which is a satellite fire station, police shooting range, the library project. Things like that are those larger projects that you're not seeing here because those are larger projects.
Are there other things we might not be seeing, like I was thinking about, like BWALT?
So BWALT is not on here because it's proposed in the capital plan as being funded through grants and alternative funding sources, so not town sources. So that's why you're not seeing it on this capital project schedule. When you're creating the overall plan, you would see it on there, and it does exist within the capital plan.
Okay, so.
And this capital project schedule doesn't include things like water and sewer, so we were just focused on the general fund. So there are other projects.
Okay,
that we have on the schedule that aren't on this schedule, because again, we were just focused on the general fund.
Okay, but just so I'm clear, so couldn't some of these projects, I don't know, just pick one, so, Fisher Street sidewalk improvements, couldn't some of those be benefiting from other funding sources? I'm not going to use the word grants. I'm just trying to understand, like, when we're looking at this, is it going to be kind of all inclusive of the horizon or a subset? I guess.
So both. The full plan, I should have started this by saying that this is just an introduction for you for this, because we just kind of want to make sure we're going in the right direction. But that the intention would be that the full plan would show everything. And right now, our capital plan does show everything. But in terms of sort of scheduling it out and being able to see everything, and these new funding sources and how that will all work, that's what the full plan will show. The reason that you're missing a lot of capital projects from this particular slide is because this is just about the capital stabilization fund.
I understand. Thank you. Okay.
Patrick?
Go ahead.
Just a couple things. One, Shelby, to yours. I think when I looked at the policy you put in there, it does indicate that it's this stabilization, but when available, applicable federal, state, private grants, et cetera, is right in the policy, which I think is great.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a question on this, just to be clear, is this intended just for what I'll call maintenance projects, or could there be new construction that falls under whatever that debt exclusion piece is? So I'll just throw an idea. Say we decided that we wanted to build new bathrooms at Chauncey, and it's going to be $1,500,000 because we have too much graffiti and
with
people
robotic attendance.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I just thought that, or a pavilion someplace, or I don't know, pickleball court, something that is not something that goes to debt exclusion with the anticipation. So capital, it's not just, I guess the question, I'm thinking back to like accounting, and you hear a lot in budgeting of this thing called funded depreciation, which is really like capital stabilization, but it's really about how you keep up with maintenance without having big chunks, which I liken this to, but I'm assuming that there will be not just maintenance projects like new HVAC things or repairs, it also could be smaller new projects. Is that?
I think that's a good point. I actually don't think that we considered that, because when we were talking about, we felt like we considered them sort of larger projects, that anything new, that the debt exclusion, some of the value of the debt exclusion is that the community has sort of the two bites at the apple, the town meeting vote and then the ballot, and that you're potentially getting, more input from the community on these really larger items. But I don't think we had considered that. So I think that's a good point that we should consider. Yeah.
Oh, but beyond that question, I think this is great, and a really good improvement based on learnings of what we've seen. I like the debt exclusion piece, and I think you're spot on, is that when we've thought about it, it was too late. And I think we kind of kicked ourselves saying that, hey, this would have been the better way to do it. So putting that in place, but I do also appreciate you checking with council, because we don't want some unintended consequences, because we're not required to go to debt exclusion. Are there things that actually may not be good outcomes by doing it that way?
Yeah, this is an excellent program. I put it in the category of getting ahead, so I think it's fantastic. Sean, I guess I don't want to lose sight of you. Do you have any questions?
Literally.
We lost sight of you.
Yeah, we lost sight of you.
It's just like
You out there? Did we lose him?
Sorry, I'm up in and out.
There you go. Did you have any questions, Sean, or?
He has the benefit of being on the finance team, so
He
he shared
sure-
a little bit about this already.
All right. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else? Good. Thank you very much for presenting.
Sure.
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
I might have missed, what's the next step on this?
So I think we were looking for feedback and thoughts, so I think appreciate those things, and we'll continue to work on it. Ultimately, the board's process has always been that if you're going to update that comprehensive fiscal management policy, it would go to the finance committee first.
Yep.
And so we would vet that through them, and then it would be a recommendation to you. So I think that we would want to see that. So I think what we need to do is create more of a final product that we're ready to give to the finance committee, but we just really wanted to do a check-in with you all to make sure we're kind of on the right track.
Great. If you could just give us a heads up when that
Yep.
presentation
Sure.
to Finance Committee would be, that would be great. Thanks.
Patrick, I just have one more question.
Sure.
Sorry, the decision on the 800,000, I'm assuming that wasn't a random decision. Was that because of looking at projects, or how did the,
Right, we looked at the schedule and said, okay, if we did X and then we kept moving, I mean, you can see it works perfectly with the projects that we have now currently
Yep.
through 37. So it wasn't random, no,
Yeah.
it fit in to make all the projects work.
The numbers made sense.
So, yes, I mean.
I wondered the same thing, but
Yeah.
then this really,
No, it wasn't random.
yeah.
and I should have this, I should know this off my head, but impact of 800,000 as an additional expense is
About $100.
I was just
$100
gonna, yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
103.
Yeah, that was-
My math right.
No, we mentioned finance committee, it's the first question, they're
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
gonna know it, so I just,
Yeah.
okay, that's helpful.
I think we just wanted, like Christy just said, we wanted to check in because we didn't want to go off half-kiltered and come back and have you all be like, oh, no, that's not
not
what
what we
we're
meant.
interested in, and that's not what we're.
But I think what you're
interested
doing too is by, I mean, it's stabilization by name. You're
Right.
smoothing things
Yeah.
off versus
Yeah.
having spikes because we have to pay for something
Right.
and all of a sudden it's,
in.
you
Right.
know, bigger chunks. And this, by planning
I
for
think
it and
the-
not borrowing if you don't need to. And
Exactly, and kind of looking forward and saying, what do we need to do to save for this? I mean,
Yep.
certainly, we all have mortgages and we all buy things that are very expensive that you have to, you know, get a loan for. But there
Yep.
are certainly other things in your personal life where you budget, right? And you say, okay, we're just gonna save for this. And,
Yeah.
Right.
and,
it's like when our parents had Christmas funds, right?
right, exactly.
Yeah, it's exactly,
This
it's
is-
exactly what it is. So,
So, just to follow up
Except
with,
It'll be a holiday fund.
just to follow up on Ian's
That's true.
question, and just so I understood,
Sorry.
no, $100, sort of, is that again the average,
Single family.
single family? Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So that each year would fluctuate, even though as proposed, the funding is flat at 800, that contribution amount could fluctuate based on the valuation, am I?
the valuations, so,
For the individual household?
Yes.
yes, yeah, the valuations.
The valuation would fluctuate, yes, but
Yeah.
normally what we say is the $1 million is $129.
Okay,
on the average.
that's a guide, okay, okay.
And
That
I
will
hate
fund.
to say it like this, because it's that, once it's there, right? So, once that 800,000 is built into it with the 100, it stays there. So it's not like every year.
100 every year,
the
it's
100
it's
goes
stable.
up.
Yeah, but I mean, and to that point, I mean, the important thing is that we're building up a fund that allows us to do things that we're going to need to do regardless, and this gets us well prepared for that. So I think that's the message to the community. Yes, it's certainly a sensitive topic when we talk about a $100 increase to the average tax bill, and we're all striving to keep that under control. But this is one way we can have a more predictive process and funding of those much-needed fixes in the town, so.
Yeah, and they still have to vote on it. I mean, the town, because of stabilization, still has to go to
Yeah.
town meeting.
Yes,
So it's not like we're
absolutely.
hiding
Annually.
anything.
Yeah, it's not
Anytime
like,
it's spent, it
Yeah.
has to go, yeah.
No, but even the funding of it.
Well, 800,000 would be a budgeted item, so, or would it be a? it
Yeah,
probably
I
would-
mean, the way that it was on the warrant previously was, it was within the capital plan article.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so it would be, it's in the capital plan article, but it would be
It would be a
not regularly-
subsection. Yeah.
Putting the money in and taking it out as a town meeting vote.
Thank you,
Both.
thanks, okay.
Yep.
So it gives more control.
Thanks for the
I mean,
refresher.
I like that it lets us really be strategic about if and when we take on debt in the future.
yes.
And understanding,
something.
obviously, if we're doing something that's a $19 million project.
Right,
You can't save for that, and, you know, when we were talking about it internally, it was like, but that's something that 20 years' worth of taxpayers really should have to pay for, right? I mean, one
Right.
year shouldn't have to pay for
Right,
the 19
everything,
million.
right.
People
Right.
should kind of have to pay for it, right?
Yep, making that investment.
But for things that are maintenance items that we can foresee and save for, it makes sense.
Any other comments, questions?
No, real
All right, again, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. So I think,
Just one more item.
yeah, I think we only have one more item, item 14, the update on the personnel policies, non-union stipends, allowances, and remote work policy. So you're up again, Christy.
Just close my computer. So the first one I wanted to mention is the non-union stipends and allowances. As you know, 'cause I put in the packet, we have historically provided clothing allowance and stipends to some non-union positions, but it was never memorialized in the personnel policies. It's something that we're trying to do is get it so that everyone is fully aware of the benefits of any particular position, understanding what, sort of goes along with it. So you have in your packet a listing of those. What we're asking for is, just pulling it up, sorry. What we're asking for is that the board sort of approve memorializing it in the personnel policies. There are some changes that were proposed by DPW related to engineering. And that's really to create some equity within the department. And it's a low additional cost, thank you. So, let's see. Yeah, so we've added some stipends for the engineering and DPW department, just for internal equity. So
it looks like total add there's about
1,500.
1,500 or a little
25.
less.
1,525.
yeah.
So.
Well, no, there's a
Oh, 75.
decrease.
Oh, no,
There's a
75.
decrease from engineer, so.
Right, so if you look at your second sheet,
Yep.
it gives you the total at the bottom. The stipends are the same, and the clothing allowance would increase, what I'll just say, 1,575.
Yeah, 1575.
Oh,
So,
overall,
1475.
not specific to the
I
department.
double
I'm sorry.
checked with the.
1,475.
No, I thought you were talking about DPW specifically, that's
No,
why.
no.
Oh.
I got it, sorry, thank you.
on the clothing allowance.
questions? Sean, any questions?
Yeah, thank you for your patience. I was able to get a preview of the plan, and I think there's a lot of good work being done here, so look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Sean. I guess my question is, and just educate me here, the Department of Public Works, I'm just curious, do any of, I'm just thinking of the guys on the street doing, digging the ditches, pouring pavement, that kind of thing, are they in any of these categories? Because I'm imagining they go
This is
through.
non-union.
It's not.
Oh, that's right, this is not.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
They cover the
Thank you.
union
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
they do have.
Yes.
They have-
Contract,
yeah.
yes.
All right.
Yep,
Thank you.
yep. Yep,
That was my.
yep.
stupid question.
No.
Any other comments?
All the-
All right,
Makes
terrific.
sense.
Do you need-
Next, do you want to go to the next?
Do you need,
Well, is it a motion on both?
Yeah,
Or
if you
do
can,
want a motion
do,
on this?
why don't you do them separately?
Okay.
So
And I'll take a
pretty different.
motion for updating the personnel policies to reflect the stipend allowance.
I move to update the personnel policies to reflect the current stipend allowances that are given to non-union positions and update the allowances in DPW for consistency.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, a vote. Sean?
Yes.
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes.
Marshall, yes.
And Welch, yes. Okay. On to create a remote work program for non-union employees.
Yep. So we've been working to create a remote policy. I think it's something that pre-COVID we had never considered. I don't think most municipalities had. Since COVID, some municipalities have really started to look at this as an option for recruitment, retention, just recognizing that even in municipal work, it sometimes is appropriate to have some remote work. So I had provided you in your packet initially a policy. We had actually gathered several policies from different communities. I had initially provided you with a draft of that, which was really coming from policies from 2 communities. And then I had forwarded it to town council at the same time. So town council then provided me back an updated policy, which I sent to you via email, and that's what's been replaced in your packet. I did receive, and what I just passed out, and I'm sorry, Sean, I'll send that to you. I did receive some questions from Shelby, and then also a suggestion from Alan, which I've incorporated into the policy in front of you. I know there are other questions as well. I guess I'm happy to answer any questions from the board. For the public, this would only apply to full-time and regular part-time non-union employees. And then it would be, there's a remote work agreement that would have to be signed off by town manager, employee, and supervisors or directors, depending on which structure they're within.
And sorry, Chrissy, would also exclude, I didn't think I heard you say this, exclude those employees under the supervision of the school department.
Correct, thank you. Yep.
Questions?
Yeah, so I did have several questions. Appreciate that some of, I guess, we're getting a copy of this now. I would just ask that we have time to consider it. I mean, if there's not a sense of like urgency to get this done at this meeting, that we move this to our next agenda for vote.
Okay. Other thoughts?
And, yeah.
I would just say that the reason that it looks marked up probably more than it really is that there's several spaces where I was asked to make remote work capitalized, and so throughout the document I made remote work capitalized, which touches pretty much every page of the document. Alan had given me some language around employees working off of their personal computer. So if you look at the second page, that's where that has been included under B3. So you'll see that there.
Yeah, I guess on that note, I do have a question or a concern. When I saw the personal computer use, I was really worried. 2 things. One is I think it's an undue burden on our town department to manage that control of a person's external computer. And the other thing is I believe it adds risk not only to the town but also to the employee, as there's an expectation that an employee would be policing their own system. In most cases, I'll say the significant majority of cases, when systems are hacked, the individual doesn't know that the hack actually happened. So I would encourage us to look at alternatives in regards to remote laptops, systems for those employees. And I don't know, and I talked to Christy about this earlier, about what does that mean? What is the volume? What is the number of eligible employees? Is it 10? Is it 50? What is it? I don't know. How many laptops do we have at our disposal to provide those people? Do we need to look at perhaps VPN clients to also, which I don't know if we have the capability today, as I believe the town is using kind of, I'll call it legacy technology with tunneling in through, a tool to remote manage their laptop within the town premise. And there's even actually risk to doing that. So I think Shelby is correct. I think we need more time to consider that piece of it. And I certainly appreciate Alan's feedback here, but it still implies or suggests that we would have external systems accessing town resources. So,
Yeah, I had the same concern. I am not an expert, and I assume our IT department too, but it's just, thinking about, if feasible, I'd love it to be not a employee-owned computer, but that the town, if you're remote working, you're using a town-owned device. So it has all the proper things. It can be checked and scanned, whatever. It may not be economically feasible, and I defer to experts. I am not an expert. It just, when I saw the personal one, the same thing you said, Al, it just scares me a little bit of the risks that we may take on that we don't know about.
Yeah,
So-
especially since we're broadening out with Microsoft 365 and the technology really expects that connection to be there between the client, the remote client, and so I think it's super important. Go ahead, Alan.
So the item I added would basically, the employee would agree to effectively let the town install all the security and protection mechanisms that the town is using on town-owned equipment, which, antivirus, anti-malware, but also any managed detection and response that could trigger an automatic response from a vendor for an incident, and the ability to monitor and manage that. So it includes remote access for technical support. This is standard commercial type of activity. I don't want to get too far in the weeds. There are other options, is providing a virtual desktop where someone opens a browser and clicks.
That's the
And then
technology that's
boom,
today. Yeah.
there's, a desktop, there's an infrastructure, an operating cost to that. Given that our systems are a mix of in the cloud and systems that physically have to be on premise to meet the needs of the town. And so,
sorry, I thought you were done.
always proponent of being uber careful with personal equipment connecting to the town environment. But there are, so long as the employee knows that if they're using personal equipment, they're effectively ceding a certain level of control over that equipment to the town to manage it and make sure it's protected, as if it were a town-owned asset, we would be adequately protected.
Well,
And it's broader too, because as we move to some of the changes being made, if people have access to their email from their cell phone, they're using personal devices to access and in. And the Microsoft 360 environment actually allows for your phone, smartphone, to be as functional as a desktop computer in the environment. And so there'll be a lot of policy and tool decisions. I wouldn't outright ban, when we put policies like this into small businesses, a fair enough large percentage of employees will not want to use personal equipment.
Yes.
Because they're ceding control to their employer. And that may be the case here. So I don't know if you want to totally ban the use of personal equipment. You just want to make sure that it's managed and protected as if it were a town asset.
everything you say is true, Alan. I would just say that when you use personal equipment, there's a couple of things that come to mind, and I'm sure I could give you more. But in the scenarios that you outlined, one of the problems, and this is why I believe it's much cleaner to go to just a town-supported device, town-purchased device, is that you're now forcing that employee who wants to remote workly to perhaps have to upgrade their entire operating system at a cost to be in compliance before any tools are actually installed, is just one example. You're also putting a burden, and this is what I meant by the undue burden, you're putting an undue burden on the IT department to have to understand potentially 20, 30, I don't know how many employees we're talking about here, all the differences and variances of their systems, right? To say, Joe's got this, Mary's got this, I need to understand that, and granted, they may be compliant, but there could be unique differences between those and even conflicting software within the system. The other, point about, the remote piece of it is that just the expectation of an individual, again, that awareness around potential vulnerabilities, to me, I would rather have a hardened, imaged, and for those that aren't aware of what that means, it means that our IT department would likely create an image of a standard operating system with standard protective software and all of the tools that they need to do their job on that is in compliance with the town's policy for safety. That would not exist. Regardless, if you put those things on there, there is nothing on a personal computer, there's nothing that prevents that employee from downloading malware or anything else on their system that may infect without their knowledge. So I would love to see something more clean on this in regards to it, and simply for a few $1,000s, whether we create a shared laptop system where people check them out, or whether we create a thing where it says, hey, we got potentially 20 employees, 10 of them have laptops currently and 10 of them don't, let's go, make a purchase. I think it's in our best interest to do something like that.
Well, so, I think you were, You guys have already out-teched me tonight, so
Me
thank
too.
you. But I share the concerns. I don't profess to understand all the technology, but, and I can appreciate both of your, kind of how you're approaching this. I guess I would, given that we've had this amount of discussion, I'd love to hear from, kind of Christie through you and to Mark, like, what are his thoughts about this? Obviously, I'm sure he's looked at the policy, but I feel like maybe if we just had a bit more information, like how would that be handled? I would probably be comfortable with that explanation, but I think there's just a lot of questions, and technology was one of the ones that I had highlighted as well, so that's all.
Just want to reach out to Sean, see if he has any thoughts or comments.
No, I echo some of those thoughts, and no, thank you. I think this has been good discussion. Nothing further.
Thanks, Sean.
Can I just, I think that the way the policy is written is very similar to how it was really applied during COVID. So I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think that that's probably where a lot of, people were using personal computer. It was a scramble, right? Desperation. But so happy to talk to Mark about the ability. I don't know. I honestly don't know how many of the employees this policy would be available to that actually have computers assigned to them. So.
Yeah, I would echo Shelby, though, if it's possible to get Mark in to just talk to us about this, kind of understand what he foresees as challenges, one way or the other, whatever that is, and get his recommendation on how I proceed. I think that would be helpful. I would just raise one other point, kind of on the same topic of the policy, but a different piece of it is just one minor thing I caught. I think it's important that we define the core business hours. I saw that in there, and I didn't see it as a definition. I think that's important to define, but that's really the only feedback I had.
So one reason that we wouldn't do that is because a lot of departments work different hours. So for example, the DPW works different hours than the town hall, than the council on aging.
So perhaps for each department?
Well, you just put it as
But
regular
not in
work
the
hours,
policy. Right.
Yeah, just a definition. Well, I don't.
Just saying the core business hours are the regular work hours
right? Yeah, I think the
Of the
definition was,
department.
I think the definition said
as
regular,
defined
regular office
for that
hours.
position. Because you have,
Right, even within a department.
even within a
you have
department, you
different-
have, some positions that have different work hours.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions? Sean, you good? Thumbs up if you, all right,
So it
good.
sounds like we're going to put this on the agenda for the next meeting
Yeah.
for approval. Okay.
So I think some of the questions that we were getting are just as you're going through it, just some of the questions that might rise up are actually probably in the agreement. So there is, within the agreement, it talks about the hours as assigned to the position, things like that. So I know that there were some other questions that really are within the agreement. So just looking at those in terms of our plan to how it is implemented. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for working on that. It's something I've been looking for a while, so appreciate it. No further comments on that. I guess we'll move to item 20, issues and correspondence of the select board. Anybody want to go first? Sure, Ian, go ahead.
Just a couple updates. So we did have a municipal building committee meeting last week on getting close to finalization of the Forbes project. Things still continue to go as planned. The one piece that we will be having finalized, I think as we talked before, is some of the heating panels, which we, that in the police station, or heat deflector panels, whatever, that were installed incorrectly. The decision was made to fix those ourselves while withholding final payment to the construction company. Those are ongoing, and that work is being completed. Knock on wood. The good news is it looks like it's going to come in well under what we had proposed out of that number, but we're going to get that fixed. And really, we're wrapping up the final pieces here to hopefully close out the project this summer. So we'll have another meeting scheduled, and as I said, close this out. It's time.
Yeah, I would just add that some of that we were waiting to see how the HVAC systems functioned, given the fix. So this is the second summer, which is how we had anticipated evaluating it.
And they're
it's
working
going
fine.
well. So.
No issues. So, and then just an update, golf club building reuse committee. We haven't met since our last meeting, but as folks know, the survey's out there. At last check, and I know it's probably more now, but we're well over, I think, 1,400 responses back in.
Good.
So we are definitely, and as folks have seen, we continue to, that was part of the what the committee asked for, and thank you to the various town departments and groups. We've been pushing that information out. The deadline for folks' responses, they still have time. It's the end of this week.
Okay.
And post that is, I know Owen is ready to start collecting all the numbers and, putting information back together for the committee. We will meet again in the second week of July. Will be our next meeting to really review that. I think it will take a little bit of time. As I understand it, we had, I think, close to 50% of the responses had verbatims in there, so there's going to be a lot of information, narratives and stuff to read.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's exactly what the committee wanted. We wanted broad participation. So I encourage anybody that has not submitted it to go and do that. And we look forward to seeing what the responses are, and we'll review it. And again, still scheduled to be, right now, our schedule is to present out our recommendations to this board at our last meeting in September. The charge we had was to do this by October 1st, so we've decided we're going to do better. We're going to present it out by the fourth Tuesday in September, if all goes as planned.
Thank you. Next, anyone?
Sure. Couple of updates. As was noted earlier, the Affordable Housing Trust received two responses to our RFP for the redevelopment of 3 Baylor Avenue. Follow-up questions to each of the bidders have gone out specific to their proposals for clarification. And the time frame right now is we are hopeful that we will be able to make a decision and announce an award at our regularly scheduled meeting on July 13th, which work towards the project and the redevelopment could start in as little as 6 to 8 weeks after that. So things will continue to move forward. That we held a special meeting on June 2nd. There was an executive session followed by a public session where we announced that the trust signed a purchase and sale agreement for a property at 6 Beach Street for redevelopment as affordable and workforce housing. And we're expecting that purchase to close sometime late August at this point, given the processes involved. Also, in the town manager's report, Christie mentioned discussions about the trust taking on some incidental responsibilities related to affordable housing that are sort of dispersed and not centralized. The trust did meet and in public session voted to, if the town wants to accept those responsibilities and take on those roles. As an example, there are 3 apartment complexes in town that the town is the monitoring agent for compliance with rents for DHCD. Currently, our former town planner was doing that. That is something that could transfer to the trust. We're involved in that process. We know what those rents are. It's not a heavy burden. When privately owned affordable homes that are still under affordability restriction come up for sale, the town has a first right of refusal. So the responsibility for the trust to participate in that process, potentially exercise the first right of refusal or make a recommendation to the select board regarding that, things of that nature. And so as there's continuing discussions and exactly what would moves forward, we'll have updates here, and I expect at some point there'll be an agenda item or 2 for this board to consider. And that's it.
Thank you. Shelby?
Sure. So a couple items. First, I'll start with committee updates. So as the board is aware, the Hockomock Pond Reuse Committee did receive, was accepted into the Yukon TAB program. So members of that grant team from Yukon actually toured the site with our conservation director and other members of the committee. And then actually we had a committee meeting with those representatives. So they are doing their grant work, and that work will really sort of prepare us for the information we will need for any future grants in terms of kind of reuse of that property, primarily for trail creation. But obviously important in that discussion is the regional 911 dispatch grant, and understanding what the scope of that work will cover. So more to come, but that work is underway. The Waste Management Exploratory Committee will be meeting sometime, hopefully around the second week in July, as this board tasks me as its, or actually from the Waste Management Committee, I was assigned as this board's representative to work with Christy and Jen Sullivan, and we've had some meetings with haulers to, kind of ask some preliminary questions that could frame out an RFP and a process there. So we'll discuss that with the Waste Management Committee, but lots going on there, and hopefully we'll have a meeting with an update for the board in the next couple weeks. On Active Transportation Safety Committee, I guess I'll just tie in kind of the work, which is somewhat related on the B-Waltz Trail. As you know, the town received the Mass Trails Grant, which is a huge, significant grant to help us with 25% design for Section 2 of the trail, of which there are, I forget if it's 7 or 8 sections, as we've defined in the feasibility study. So there was a small work group that met, Christy and other representatives of the town staff, to really talk about how we would actually begin to kind of implement that grant, who would manage that grant, and so on and so forth. So that work is underway, and we will be needing access from landowners along that Section 2, not for easements, just access to go out and do basically the design work, and to it. So that is kind of part of an important part of the process as next steps. Upcoming, I guess I want to make the board aware that I've received from a couple of folks questions about our VIA service, and I know that that's it's a really important resource. I guess I'll just say that right now the questions that have come to me are, I'm older, I want to use it, but there's no material for, like, I don't understand how to use it, I don't understand this app thing. I went to the library, I went to the senior center, there's not information for me to be able to kind of access it. So I don't know to what extent we can, I know our town planner, who is now retired, we're waiting for Jennifer to start. I'm not sure what, opportunities are there, but if that service continues to remain a viable one, I just think we need to kind of think about how an Uber-like service can be more accessible to all of our residents. So I'll just kind of put that out there. I would ask, speaking of driving thing, that with all the kids being out of school, that their awareness on the roads and sidewalks is equally as important as drivers, being aware that there's lots more people on the street, so let's respect both pedestrians and traffic, and be smart. And then finally, Jen already mentioned it, but the block party is this Friday, June 30th, from 5:30 to 9, and if the music and food and fun is enough incentive, I actually have volunteered to be in the Lions dunk tank. So get your money ready. I'm helping them to raise money. So, but you do have to throw the ball. You can't run up and just push the buttons. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Right, yeah, I know,
Who's gonna stop
actually,
me? It all depends how much money you pay.
yeah, right, the public is just running to the bank right now to get some small bills, I'm
I'll bring
sure.
my
But
sons.
yeah, so anyway, it should be a fun night.
I'm loosening up now.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Hey, Patrick.
No one
Go ahead,
else
so
is,
made it.
no one else is volunteering. I mean, there's still room, so, anyone?
Ooh, she's putting a
Bueller?
challenge out to the rest of the
Bueller?
board here. Oh, boy.
No, that might be a quorum of the board, so I can't volunteer.
I don't think anybody wants to
If
see
I
me in my
were in
bathing
town.
suit.
If I were in town.
Sean, do you have anything?
I am all good. I'd just like to say happy 4th of July to everyone.
Thank you, Sean. All right, I just had to cut 2 items here. First of all, committee-wise, the Master Plan Implementation Committee has completed kind of its next assessment, level of assessment or understanding of what's happening in the town. As you can imagine, there's a wide swath of varying knowledge, so it's great that we've gone through this process of level setting, and I want to thank the various departments that came to present to the committee, the DPW, the Rec Department, Conservation, Sustainable Westborough, EDC, Town Planner, and I suspect I'm missing somebody, but it was a great experience, a lot of really good feedback from the committee as part of those presentations. The committee now is looking to reconvene in early August to allow time for the new town planner, who, another message here, is starting, I believe, July 5th, to come on board and start to understand our master plan even more and get familiar with the community even more before she starts to work with MPIC as well as Sustainable Westborough and other entities. So we're really looking forward to that. In our next meeting, we're going to kind of level set on the knowledge that we've gained and actually start to hopefully check off some boxes where we can now come back to perhaps the community at fall town meeting to share our assessment of what has been completed on the master plan, and that's kind of what we're trying to strive for, is at least a probably annual cadence of report back to the community. The other note I'll just make is I just want to put a shout out to the boys and girls tennis teams that made it to the state finals. Yep. Amazing achievement, tremendous competition. I was really rooting for them and watching the score online as best I could. So I really think they should feel very proud of that achievement and getting it so far into that tournament. And that said, I have nothing else. Any further comments, questions, thoughts on the board? All right, I will take a motion to move into an executive session.
Want me to do that?
Sure.
You don't have to read the collective bargaining one, the first one.
We're not going to do that? Any more you want to
No.
take off? I move we enter into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, R.E. Ferris Development Group LLC versus Town of Westborough, Lax Media LLC, and Lax Media MA LLC, Worcester Superior Court, CA number 2285CV01281. If the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, R.E. Town of Westborough versus Westborough SPE LLC, Worcester Land Court, 19 TL 000768. If the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, RE the 3M Company, formerly known as Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing Company, ATOL 2:23-EV-01117, if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's litigating position. Under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property at 1500 Union Street, if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's negotiating position. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, RE Residences of Westborough Station, Northland TPLP LLC at 100 Charlestown Meadows Drive, Worcester Land Court, case number 22, MISC 000445-DRR, if the chair declares an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the town's negotiating position. and under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to act under the authority of the Select Board to approve executive session minutes of June 13th, 2023, Session 1 and Session 2.
And I declare that an open meeting would have a detrimental effect to negotiation, litigating, and bargaining positions as stated. The board will not be reconvening in open session after the executive session. Thank you.
Second?
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Marshall, yes.
Ian?
Johnson, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Sean?
EO, yes.
And Welch, yes. Thank you very much.